Just walk away. Just walk away, and there will be an end to the horror.
All right, we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Lamprey and I's weekly chats, MGTOW chats. This is episode, what are we at now, Lamprey? 44, I think. And our guest today is known as the Brooklyn Monk, but his real name is Dr. Antonio, it's Graceffo, correct?
That's correct.
Dr. Antonio Graceffo. He is an MMA fighter? Is that correct to say, an MMA fighter?
Yeah, we could say he's a martial artist. Maybe
martial artist.
Better.
Okay, he's a martial
I'm not
artist.
Fighting right now.
Okay, he's a martial artist. He also has a PhD in what?
In Wushu, Chinese traditional martial art.
There you go. PhD in Wushu. And he's also an author of a number of books. I will put a link to his Amazon page after the show in the notes below. So, Antonio, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners? We've got about 9 watching now.
Sure.
Our listeners, I'm sure, will be very interested in what you have to say. So why don't you at least let them know who you are, where you are, what you're doing now?
Sure. So, coming to you today from Shandong in China, sunny Shandong province, which is, if you look at a map and you see where the world ends, it's another 40 kilometers beyond that. It's the place where my ancestor Columbus was afraid he was going to sail off the edge of the earth. It's a little beyond that.
Right.
So I've been in Asia since 2001, and I've been doing Martial Arts Odyssey, which is a web series where I go around Asia and I train different traditional martial arts with different masters and shoot videos and write articles for Black Belt Magazine. I've had a column there for 10 or 11 years. My column's been running in Black Belt Magazine. And my interest, all my other interest apart from martial arts, though, is economics. And when I graduated my PhD in Wushu, I went on immediately and started a second PhD in economics, and that's in process right now. So my first PhD, the Chinese government gave me a full scholarship to wrestle and do a PhD in traditional martial arts at Shanghai University of Sport, and it's the only university, to my knowledge, it's the only university in the world that offers that PhD. In China, they have this system of sports schools and sport universities, and that's kind of where they train the Olympic athletes. And so they do all the Olympic sports plus all the Chinese traditional sports. And so that's where I studied. And that was all obviously taught in Chinese, and I was the only foreigner. And then when I graduated, then I started my economics PhD. And so I work as an economic researcher in cooperation with Chinese government, and I administer a series of schools in Shandong province.
Right on. So the Brooklyn Monk, for all you guys listening, this guy's got an ear to the ground in China. So it will be definitely interesting to hear, especially about the economics and what's going on. Now, you're also an author. Why don't you tell us a little bit some of the books you've written? And I'll promo that later in the notes.
Okay. Yeah, so to date, I have 10 books, and most of them are related to martial arts. My other interest when I first started out as well was linguistics. So I tended when I first came over to Asia, if you want to learn a foreign language, you want to be immersed. And as an adult, it's very difficult to create immersion for yourself in a foreign language. If you're a young person, if you're a high school student in particular, you might do one of those exchanges where you go live with a family in a foreign country and attend high school, and you're really immersed. And so at the end of a year, you'll generally be speaking the language. As an adult, it's very difficult to do. I tried living with Chinese families, but they kicked me out. No. No one wanted to adopt a 50-year-old man. So, seriously, it's actually very difficult. And if you come over and you work, you're generally working in an environment where they need you for some expertise that you have, and they don't want language being an impediment to you doing your job. So they surround you with English-speaking people. So as an adult, it's really hard to create immersion. So I used martial arts as a way of creating immersion, because the martial artists generally don't speak English, and I could live with them and train with them and do the things they were doing and learn the language. So a lot of my books, I deal with that notion of using martial art as an inroad to learn the culture, to learn the language. And then I published a lot of articles on language learning around Asia, and studied Thai and Khmer and Chinese and Korean and Vietnamese and things. And more recently, then, when I did my PhD in Wushu, I spent 3 years working on my doctoral dissertation, which was a comparison of Western and Chinese wrestling. And the nice thing about that was that I had been training in Asia for many years at that point, and training since I was 12 years old in martial arts. So I had a good practical background, and then I did the academic research, which about the first year and a half of the PhD, all you do is you just read everything that's already been published in your field, and then you're supposed to add to the body of knowledge. You're supposed to say, okay, the world is at this point in research, and now we're going to write the next step. And then the person who comes after me will start with my research and write the next step, and that's how the body of knowledge evolves. And so that's what I did for wrestling, or attempted to do. Let's say, I don't want to say I achieved it, but I tried. Right. And so that's basically my background. And then I wanted to do the PhD in economics, but when I first got my PhD scholarship, my Chinese level wasn't high enough that I thought I could do a PhD in economics. So I went all the way through the Wushu PhD, because academically it was a little bit easier. And so by the end of that, my Chinese was at a higher level. Right.
And so why don't you plug the last book you wrote, so if people want, they can go look it up.
Yeah, so my doctoral dissertation was 中西摔跤快文化比较, and that means it was a cross-cultural comparison of Chinese and Western wrestling, and I was debating how exactly to publish. For one thing, I wrote it in Chinese, and I wanted to publish it, and I didn't want to publish it as an academic dissertation because nobody's going to read it, and so I rewrote it as a book in English, and the book is called The Wrestler's Dissertation, and that's been published in the United States now. It's available on Amazon.com.
Right on. I'll have to pick up those books, man, because Nick's got me interested in a lot of what you're talking about, so I'll definitely pick those up. And for anybody listening, I will stick links to his Amazon page after the show in the notes, so anybody coming in can check it out. Now that we've kind of get to know who you are, Antonio, Nick, what do you want, or Lamprey, what do you want to do? Where do you want to jump in? You want to jump in on China?
Well, we want to know, there's a lot of question marks in regards to Trump's tariffs. Are they good? Are they bad? Some people say it's going to crush the U.S. economy. There's, obviously the Trump hatred in the news really, will exacerbate any type of any problem. So what is really happening? What is going on? Can you get us through the smoke and mirrors?
Yeah, and before you do, though, Antonio, and Lamprey, explain to the layman, because I'm a layman too when it comes to this. I don't pay too much attention to a lot of the American politics, except for what's kind of thrown in your face in social media. So I'm a little bit ignorant, and especially even about the tariffs. So I mean, what is Trump doing with these tariffs? And it's related directly with China? Because I don't know too much about it.
Well, Chinese stock market's not doing good right now. I know that.
I'm sorry, you want Nick to explain the tariff, or you want me to explain the tariff?
I have no idea. I really have no idea what's going on. Can you explain it to us?
Let's get you to explain it. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, the situation is this. The United States runs a trade deficit with China. This means the United States imports more products from China than China imports from us. Okay? So we have a trade deficit. And we have had a trade deficit for many years. And the U.S. has what we'd call an overall trade deficit. It means that for every country in the world, essentially, we export more to them. I'm sorry, we import more from them than we export to them.
Okay.
In other words, we're buying more stuff from them than they're buying from us. Most countries. We actually run a trade surplus with a few countries like Singapore, but Canada would be another example. We have a trade deficit with Canada. We import more Canadian stuff than Canadians import of our stuff.
Right.
So a lot of people are worried and they think that this negatively impacts the economy. So it's a very complicated question whether or not that negatively impacts the economy. One of the reasons is that, okay, first of all, let's take the Canada example because, let's take that. Maybe easier for people to understand. I could name 3 reasons right off the bat why the U.S. imports more than Canada. Number 1, Americans earn more than Canadians, so we buy more stuff.
Right.
Number 2, there are 10 times as many Americans as there are Canadians. Right?
Yep.
Straight away, that one alone.
Yes.
How could you expect Canada to import the same amount of stuff? And
Exactly. Yeah.
And then number 3, because of taxes in Canada, people can't buy as much stuff. Products are more expensive in Canada than they are in the United States. So I mean, does that mean then that the U.S. is poor, or does that mean that Canada is making us poor? I just don't see it, right?
Right.
So a lot of economists say that running a trade deficit just actually demonstrates that a country is richer at the end of the day, because it means we can afford to buy more stuff.
Right.
Another point about a trade deficit is that if we go back like 300 years ago, right, everyone who lived in North America 300 years ago was a farmer full-time.
Right.
So you had 100% of the population working in agriculture. And when you have people working in agriculture, they're really poor. If you look at the United States as an example, or you look at anywhere in the world where people are farming, farmers, generally when you think of rich people, you don't think of farmers,
Exactly.
you think of, investment bankers and lawyers, things like this. So we all understand that farmers just don't earn that much money. And it also means that farmers don't contribute that much to the GDP. So in other words, in the United States, average agricultural worker earns $2,000 a month.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so let's go to the next layer up from agriculture is manufacturing. So what does a factory worker earn in the United States? Well, a factory worker earns like $3,000 a month. Okay, so he earns more than a farmer. But do you consider $3,000 a month a lot of money? No. I live on Long Island, and on Long Island, the average income is like $10,000 a month. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? It means that as countries become richer, like you start out, everybody's a farmer, and then the next step is people start working in factories, producing things,
right,
and the country gets a little richer. And the United States was there like around the time of World War II and right after World War II. And then you take the next step. People start sending their kids to college. The kids become investment bankers and lawyers, and they start earning a lot of money, and then the country becomes rich. And that's why the U.S. is richer than Laos, or
right,
richer than, I don't know, pick a country where people work in agriculture.
But America's broke, though.
America's not broke. America's not broke.
So who's paying the $17 trillion?
What are you saying? What 17 trillion?
The debt, the government debt. Let's just
the
start
debt or
with
the
that.
deficit? Okay, so that's a really complicated. First of all, let's take a look at America's broke. The average income in the United States is about $54,000 a year. Okay, that puts us in the top probably 18 or 20 countries in the world in terms of income of what the average person is earning. Mm-hmm. Okay, and Nick, you've lived overseas. You've lived in Cambodia. The average income is $1,500 a year.
Yeah, something like that.
Pretty low.
Yeah. It's pretty low, right? I live in China. China's the number 2 economy in the world, and the average income is $9,000 a year.
Wow. So
Americans are dramatically richer than most of the world's population. If we want to start looking at other things like buying power, what products cost, you're up there in Canada, and I assume you would know, housing prices, for example, in Canada are about 30% higher than they are in the United States.
Yes,
is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, and then also wages are a bit lower than the U.S. They're not dramatically lower, but it's probably 10-15% on average lower than the United States.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Yeah, average income. I actually don't know the minimum wage in Canada, and I would not be surprised if it was higher than the U.S. minimum wage, but the average income in Canada is about 10-15% lower than the United States. So you got a lower income, you got a more expensive house, and then products cost about 10% more in Canada than they do in the States. and your taxes are higher.
Correct.
So the average American can buy more stuff than the average Canadian. And you figure Canada is already one of the best countries on earth. And I'm a huge Canada fan, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, so Canada would be in that top, 20 countries in the world, right? Like, if you had to pick a place to live.
Yeah, for
Canada
standard of living, for sure.
Standard of living is, yeah, exactly. And you've lived in Indonesia, right? So
yes.
You saw, Indonesia, the average income is something like $5,000 a year.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's pretty low.
Yeah. So
standard of living is not too high either there, yeah.
Right, and standard of living is not too high. Like, do you ever take a bucket shower in Canada?
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't have to. Exactly.
Yeah, so when people tell me that America's broke or this, well, what are you comparing it to? I don't know what you're comparing it to. And this is all complicated stuff. But the question is about the trade deficit right now. So the U.S. has a trade deficit with China. So we're buying more stuff from them than they're buying from us. So then the question is why? They have a population 4 times that of the United States. They should be buying more stuff than us. But then the people don't have as much money. But the other issue is that the government in China puts tariffs on U.S. products. So a U.S. automobile that's shipped over to China, which U.S. cars, by the way, are the #1 cars in China, the most popular cars in China.
Okay.
They cost on average about 200 to 300% of what they cost in the United States.
Wow.
The average U.S. product coming to China gets marked up 12 to 20% with tariffs, meaning basically import duties, taxes by the government. 12 to 20%. The average Chinese product going to the U.S. gets marked up 4%.
Okay.
So that's something that the government could control. That's something where the government could sign one piece of paper and say, you know what, let's knock this tariff down. Let's do reciprocal. The U.S. charges 4%, China charges 4%. But China didn't want to do that. China wants to keep the tariffs high to protect their domestic industries.
Right.
So Donald Trump comes along and he says, you know what, this is not fair. Donald Trump has a very, love him or hate him, it's actually irrelevant whether you like him or not. I'm going to explain his behavior. His behavior is that he's a businessman.
Yeah.
And that in business, if I have a company and you have a company and we're doing business, I would expect you to treat me reciprocally.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, if I charge 4% on your product, you should charge 4% on my product. Right?
Right.
And that's the kind of thing that Donald Trump's talking about. So then he said, okay, well, we're going to increase tariffs on Chinese products to balance this out.
Now, what was it again? What is the Chinese tax again for the Americans? 10 to...
I believe it's 12 to 20% on average, but some products are dramatically higher, like automobiles. I believe it can be 100 and even 200%.
What about raw goods?
What's that?
Raw goods like steel and rare earths and stuff.
That I'm not as sure about, and I don't know that the U.S. is exporting a lot of raw goods to China. The other thing is that a lot of these products, China has sectors. They divide business into sectors. Certain sectors are restricted, so no foreigners can be involved in them at all. And there's other ones that are, let's say, controlled, where there's very limited involvement by foreign companies. And so that's one of the other things that Donald Trump's upset about. So when you say rare earth, for example, a Chinese company could go to the United States and open a rare earth company. An American company cannot come to China and do rare earth minerals business.
Right.
You can't be involved in telecommunications, or let's say it's heavily restricted. Military products, aviation, communication. There's tons of areas. Semiconductors, obviously. Just a ton of areas.
Is Trump putting a stop to that?
Yeah. So Trump now. So there's a bunch of stuff. There's the tariffs, but apart from the tariffs, there are a number of other laws that have been on the books. This is another thing. The media that criticizes Trump makes it appear that Trump invented all of this. He did not. Most of the laws, actually all the laws that he's working on have already existed, have existed for many years, have been used by other presidents in the past. So like there's a Section 301, which is it allows the president to halt imports or to raise duties based on IP violations, intellectual property violations. So Trump is doing that against China after the United States Trade Representative did an investigation and determined that China was violating intellectual property laws. Mm-hmm. There's other laws on the books that say that defense-related industries or in cases of national threats to national defense, that the president can put a halt to trade or order the United States Trade Rep to halt trade. So Trump is enacting a lot of these laws, or he's using the authority of these laws. But these laws have always existed, and that's a very important point. He didn't invent any of these.
Right. Yeah, I've actually heard a little bit about that, because even if you try to avoid a lot of this information, it gets thrown at you through social media anyway. So you do hear some of it, yeah. And I did hear you do hear a lot of blame put on Trump as if he created these things.
Yes.
Very strange.
Yeah, and actually Obama put tariffs on a number of Chinese products. To date, he actually put more tariffs than Trump has. Trump is threatening very big tariffs, and he's probably going to make good on that. But up until now, actually, Obama actually put more tariffs than Trump did.
There you go.
But the issue is why can't you have? Okay, let me ask you a question. What do you think is the largest social networking platform in the world?
I think Nick brought it up a while ago. It's some Chinese social network, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a pretty good guess. I think it's actually second to Facebook. I think Facebook might be the biggest, but you're right. So, and that was going to be my point. So WeChat, which is what we use here in China, is one of the biggest in the world. And why? It has over 1 billion users. Why? Because all other social networking platforms are banned in China. Mm-hmm. So if you ban everybody, then everyone just uses one, and it's literally 100% of the population uses WeChat. So now you have the largest social networking platform in the world, and no one's heard of it outside of China. And that, for me, is an allegory for everything about China. What's the biggest bank in the world? Oh, the biggest bank in the world is not, HSBC. It's not Citibank. It's ICBC, which is a government-owned bank in China. Why? Because until a number of years ago, there were only 4 banks in China, and they handled the 1 billion people, and everything is like that in China. They have these restrictions, and so there's only a few government players in those industries, and then they become really, really large. Right.
And another question I have is, now in regards to the tariffs on Chinese goods, what do we get from China? I mean, what?
Oh my gosh! Well, every product in your house that's made of plastic
is from China.
I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but most definitely plastic products are made in China. Toys, I think all the sort of the housings and things for your electronics, the actual processors and things come out of Japan or are designed or somehow controlled by Japan, but the housings for like phones and things like that are in China. And also a lot of products are assembled in China. A lot of high-tech products are actually assembled in China, so cell phones being one of them. Right. So I read a really interesting PhD dissertation that these guys wanted to trace the origin of a cell phone that was being sold in the United States, and I can't remember the model of phone. I wish I could. I'm sorry, it wasn't a cell phone. It was the what's the small? God, I'm going to sound old and stupid right now. What's the small device called that you kids use for listening to music?
iPod.
Yeah. It was one of those type of like iPod instruments. So they
it's not
they
a cassette player
origin
anymore.
of this thing, and this thing sold for I believe, could it have been $180? Would that be right in the States, or $280?
Okay, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So it sold for that in the States, and so the extremely liberal, angry left publishes articles where they say, "Oh, this iPod sells for $280, in the States, and did you know the worker in the factory in China only earned 8 cents? This is unfair."
Right.
And first of all, whatever the worker in China earned, that is the going rate in China. You can't have a factory that underpays, because then people would just work at the other factory, right? So it's impossible, regardless of what you hear. The Nike worker earned this much. Yeah, that's the going rate in that country, in that economy. Because if it's not, people would just work somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So that's point number one. Point number two is, yes, the worker in China only earned 8 cents because all he did was assemble it. So they broke this thing apart and they traced all the pieces. And the two most expensive components of the final price. Let's say in Walmart, it sold for, I believe it was $180.
Okay.
The processor, which is the actual technology that makes it work,
Yep.
came from Japan, and that was $80. Right, so the Japanese got $80 for their brain work.
Right.
When the product got to the port in America, from the port to Walmart or wherever it was being sold retail,
Yep.
there was another $80 added to the value chain.
Right.
So America got $80 for adding what we call service, and Japan got $80 for the technology.
Right.
And then all along the way, it went through, I believe, Philippines and China and maybe some other countries that had to do with the assembly and a small part, and all of that together was like $20. So, and if I'm not mistaken, the factory in China received $4 for assembling it.
Right.
Okay, so when you asked me a minute ago, you said, now what products do we get from China? So here's a question. Do we count that product as being a Chinese product? It was assembled in China and shipped to the U.S. It actually entered the U.S. from China. Is that a Chinese product?
Right.
Okay, so part of these tariffs, along with the tariffs, is a definition of what we call origin. In other words, when we look at a product, how much of that product has to be made in a country for us to consider it an import from that country. So, for example, Canada and the U.S. have a very close, very special relationship.
Right.
So Canadian products are treated differently than, for example, Indonesian products.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but what if the product goes from Indonesia to Canada and then enters the U.S.?
Right.
Right?
No, it's still Chinese.
Well, it's not that simple. It's really not that simple. So you heard about this Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP, and Obama said that the U.S. would join the TPP, and Trump, the first thing he signed, the day he was, the first day at his desk, he signed the U.S. withdrawal from the TPP. And the left criticized him, and they said it was treason and it was stupid and this and that. Well, the reason he did it was because of origin rules that under the U.S., believe it or not, the U.S. has a special relationship with Vietnam. Actually, Vietnam and the U.S. have a very close relationship.
I believe
and we treat Vietnamese products very favorably. Under the TPP, China was going to be able to ship all their goods through Vietnam to the United States and get them in under favorable tariff rules.
Oh, okay. So basically a product originating in China coming through Vietnam to get better tariffs. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, for example, Nick's lived in Cambodia. Mm-hmm. And in Cambodia, the garment factories are a big thing. It's one of the most important employment sectors, garment factories, and they're all Chinese-owned. Basically, they don't actually produce garments in Cambodia. The garments are produced in China. They're shipped to Cambodia, and exactly enough alterations are made to the product in Cambodia for it to qualify as a Cambodian product so it could be shipped to the United States under favorable tariff rules.
Okay. Now,
well, it seems like the Chinese are really taking over, Antonio. I mean, it's getting worse. I mean, they're driving up the real estate housing in New York City. I mean, they're overpaying by large margins on things that are certainly not worth it. You know, is Trump saying anything about the immigration policy with China? I mean, is that even mentioned? You know?
To my knowledge, as of right now, I don't know that Trump is restricting or threatening to restrict immigration from China. I did a paper on that. So I work with the Chinese government think tank, and whenever something happens, they call me and ask me to do a paper and explain it, like the tariffs. They had me do one on immigration last year. There was nothing from Trump last year that seemed like they were restricting Chinese immigration. They're threatening now to restrict Cambodian government officials from entering the U.S. because of the failed elections recently, but nothing about China that I'm aware of. However, the left is criticizing Trump and saying that Trump, I can't believe, listen to this criticism. Tell me if this is legitimate. Trump is only letting educated foreigners with lots of money enter the country. I'm like, yeah.
I don't know what's the alternative, man. Like uneducated.
Yeah, well,
savages?
I mean that's it. You know, because the two visa programs they were focusing on. One is the investor visa, which you have to invest $500,000 in the United States, and you have to employ 8 Americans or whatever the rules are. And I believe over 90% of those visas go to Chinese people. And the other one was they call it the Genius Visa, which is largely Indians, and they work in like Silicon Valley, for example, like high tech. If you have high tech skills, and often if you're a PhD, and then you get preferential visa. I think that those are both very good programs. I don't know why you're criticizing that, and I don't know why anybody feels we don't need people with $500,000 or PhDs in technology to help us develop, our technology sector.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I mean, I don't see too much of China, the Chinese influence where I am, because I'm just in a small city. But you get over into Vancouver, that's when you can start to feel it a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing is the left keeps criticizing. Every time Trump wants to restrict Chinese investment or trade, the left is criticizing him, and they're making it sound like he's the only person doing it. New Zealand just passed a law saying that you have to be a New Zealand citizen to buy a private home.
Right. And
they did it because it's a country of only 5 million people.
Yeah.
Right.
500,000 Chinese could move there.
That's right.
Several 100,000 Chinese have moved. And last year, 20% of new home sales were to Chinese buyers.
Wow.
Laos is a country where we don't know how many Chinese people are there, but we suspect that they outnumber the Laotians at this point.
Wow.
That's insane.
Yep.
They're colonizing across the globe. I mean, they're in Africa, they're in South America. They're all over the place.
Well, you can drive by a construction site in Costa Rica, for example, because I used to live there. So, I talk to my friends that are there and whatnot. Driving by these massive Chinese infrastructure construction sites that are a part of the Belt and Road Initiative, and you drive past it, and all the workers, including the guys with shovels, are Chinese.
Wow.
So in a country like Costa Rica, where everybody's poor and people need jobs and whatever, and you're importing diggers, like I understand sometimes you have to import engineers and project managers, but you're importing a guy with a shovel. Like what?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, with the tariffs now, obviously there's a backlash to that from the left.
Yeah.
But how are the average American person seeing it these days? Because again, I don't keep my finger too much on the pulse.
No, the question is, what sectors in America are going to get hurt from these tariffs?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
So, okay, by definition, right, tariffs make things more expensive, right? So, and I can't believe how many times I've had to say that when people are critical. Did you know those tariffs are going to make the products more expensive? Like, yes, that is the goal of the tariff. That is the purpose. So basically, let's say right now there's a product on the market, and there's an American version and there's a Chinese one, and the Chinese one is 20% cheaper. So people buy the Chinese one because it's cheaper.
Right.
So by putting a tariff on the Chinese one, you make them both the same price. And when you have the Chinese one and the American one, and they're the same price, people are going to buy the American one because it's going to be better quality, or they're going to buy it out of patriotism, or they're going to do a coin toss, and buy one or the other, right?
Yeah.
In general, though, Chinese products do have the reputation, and well-deserved, that they are poor quality.
That's right.
Often not passing safety standards, and they just had another vaccine scandal here in China where children were inoculated with fake vaccines, and they don't know which children.
Jesus.
And just there's stuff like this all the time. So if before I was working for an Australian company, for most of the time I've been in China, I've worked for Australian universities, and every time I'd go to Australia, people would come out of the woodwork, can you bring me milk for my baby?
Wow.
Chinese people, can you bring me milk for my baby? Because they didn't want to buy baby milk in China. So, so these tariffs bring the products up to the same price. So the question, so in the States, the critics of Trump will say, well, stores like Target, for example, which is a retail discount retail in the United States, or Kmart, that's where a lot of poor people shop, and where a lot of sort of rural areas, like I grew up about half my life in Tennessee, and like when Walmart came, we were so grateful because we didn't have any place to shop,
Yep.
and they would put these things in the middle of nowhere, and basically it's poor people who shop there. But the problem is those products are largely from China, so the prices in those shops are going to go up. And so a lot of people are saying, oh, Trump has a war against poor people, he's trying to hurt poor people. It's not that. It's that these products are artificially cheap, they're coming from China, and if we bring up the price on those products, the American products become more desirable.
Yeah.
And that means either maybe manufacturing expands in the United States, which creates jobs, maybe. Yeah. And the other one is definitely, if you buy an American product, even an American product made in a robot factory with one employee, still benefits the American economy more than buying an imported product.
Right.
Gotcha.
Because every tax. Every tax. Think about this. If you got a robot factory, right? It's using electricity. It's using water. It's got to be repaired. It's got to be maintained, right? Mm-hmm. And all that money is going into the American economy. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right.
No, it's all right. What about how similar is the situation with China to Mexico? What's going on with Mexico and Trump right now? Still no wall. Still don't got no wall. No talk of the wall. So what's going on with this?
Well, Mexico's outside of my area, of research. So my two areas that I deal with are I do U.S.-China trade policy for the Chinese government, and then I also do the Belt and Road Initiative, and that part is mostly concentrated on Southeast Asia. So I don't know as much about Mexico or NAFTA. I just know that when we talk about NAFTA, when we talk about the EU, and we talk about Trans-Pacific Partnership, again, people are blaming Trump and, he's isolationist, he doesn't want to join these multilateral trade agreements. But what people are missing is that historically the U.S. has preferred bilateral trade agreements to multilateral. So the U.S. has always had a preference for bilateral, which means the U.S. has trade agreements with Germany, with Thailand, with Mexico, with Canada. And the U.S. is actually a party to very few international multilateral agreements, NAFTA being one of the few, one of the more important ones, but it's one of the few. Right. So the U.S. not wanting to join the Trans-Pacific Partnership doesn't mean the U.S. doesn't want to trade. They're still trading with all those countries. They're just doing it under bilateral trade, meaning we have one agreement with Thailand, we have a different agreement with Vietnam, a different agreement with Argentina.
Right.
And that suits us better. And I think that part of Trump's pushback against NAFTA is because he's looking at that thinking NAFTA is a departure from what we normally do, because we normally have bilateral, like we would just have separate with Canada and separate with Mexico, because they're very different countries. How could you put the Canadian economy, right? You got 38 million people versus Mexico's 150 million people. Canadian standard of living that's pretty much on par with the U.S. and Mexico, which is dramatically low. How can you possibly have a blanket agreement between those two? Right. And I think that's how he's looking at it. And also, we have trade deficits with both of those countries. So how is that? Without an agreement, I'm sure you guys would be happy to continue to sell us stuff. So,
right.
I got a question. Why would Obama put us through TPP?
So, the arguments in favor of the TPP, which are also reasonable arguments, all right, these are very reasonable. So the reasonable argument was that previous presidents were politicians, not businessmen. And if you look at things from a purely dollar and cents standpoint, the TPP made no sense. If you looked at them from a geopolitical, strategic standpoint, it may have made sense. So the idea was, why does the U.S. run a trade deficit with Vietnam? We run a trade deficit with Vietnam to help Vietnam develop, to help them get rich, to maintain the friendship, so that when we put something through in the UN, Vietnam also, votes in favor of our propositions. And so the TPP was that sort of thing. It was there are the same thing with the Paris Accords, right? The climate agreement that Trump withdrew us from. From a purely business or from a purely effectiveness standpoint, the U.S. has been using less and less. We've been admitting less and less of these harmful emissions. We're using less and less fossil fuels. We're actually reforming faster than almost any other country. China, under the agreement, China was allowed to continue to increase their emissions until 2038, which is just preposterous.
Yep.
And so from a businessman's standpoint, you look at that and you go, well, why would I sign that? That's the worst contract I've seen in my life. But from a political standpoint, you go, you know what? The U.S. is always kind of the world leader on things, and if we stay in this agreement, we can be the leader on this too, and it encourages other countries. And the other agreement was that if we were in there, we would be paying the subscription fees for some of the poorer countries. And that would be sort of a goodwill gesture. And Trump looks at it and says, well, why would I want to pay money for, Zimbabwe or, whatever country it is? That doesn't make any sense. So Trump withdrew us from it. But Obama thought it was a good idea. But geopolitically, I understand why Obama thought it was a good idea. Economically, I understand why Trump thinks it's a bad idea.
Right. But it's still withdrawn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of effectiveness, no, the U.S. is reducing, the carbon emissions.
Yeah.
And again, this is a little bit outside of my area because I don't study the United States. But the reason why it overlaps with me is that China, one of China's bragging points is that they're leading the world in green initiatives, but they're not. They're leading the world in the manufacture of green products, which produce emissions when they're producing them.
That's
It's the most hilarious thing. Like they're not actually leading the world in solar energy, which is one of the claims that I've heard from the left. Like, no, they're leading the world in the production of solar panels.
Yeah.
They're leading the world in the production of whatever, windmills or whatever, but just building them and selling them, but not actually reducing carbon emissions. Air quality in New York City on average is 80. What's called parts per million or whatever. I'm not sure what that number means, but it's 80. It's a very low number. Tokyo is 40. It's like the best urban area in the world. It's 40. New York is 80, which is really good. Shanghai on average is 180, but I've seen it go as high as 500.
Oh my God, that's like death.
Yeah, when it's 500, you can't see to the end of the block. In fact, in the classroom, I couldn't see the students sitting in the back of the room.
Wow.
Yeah. And Beijing on average is like 350 all the time.
On a side note, the air quality where I'm at right now is at 160.
Oh my God!
You know why? Because BC is burning. British Columbia is burning.
You having wildfires?
Oh yeah, the whole province is on fire.
That's why I hate the environment. Look at that, causes fires.
Well, this is kind of ironic because British Columbia was in a big role with Alberta, the province that I'm in, because we wanted to build a pipeline, a tar sand pipeline through BC to the coast, right? And BC is run by the Green Party, which is kind of communism light, and they put a stop to it. They didn't want that pipeline to go through, for environmental purposes, right? And so in there, it's ironic to me that they put all this effort into kind of reduce the carbon footprint of the people of British Columbia, and then 6 months later their entire province burns and releases more CO2 into the atmosphere than the entire span of the industrial age. I just thought the irony was quite funny.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's get into One Belt, One Road. Explain it to the people who don't know what it is.
Yes.
So One Belt, One Road was an idea that Xi Jinping put forth in 2015, and it was to sort of rebuild the old Silk Road, which was a trading route that linked China to Europe. And the Belt and Road Initiative was formed. It was entered into Xi Jinping Thought. It's one of the Xi Jinping Thought is the first, let's say, personal policy of a leader of China that's been entered into the official record since Mao. So you had Mao Thought, now you have Xi Jinping Thought, which includes the Belt and Road Initiative, and then it was entered into the Constitution of China and is now unquestionable because it's part of the Constitution. You can't question it. You can't oppose it. So the Belt and Road Initiative is a plan that China has to build a road, but it's not just a physical road like highways. It's also seaways. It includes banking networks, communication networks, telecommunications, satellites, information, soft power, education, from China all the way through Central Asia, down through South Asia, to the Middle East, and then over to Europe, and eventually through Africa and through the Americas.
Right. Now he's trying to. What's the president's name again of China?
Xi Jinping.
And this was his initiative, right?
This was his initiative.
Okay. And I mean, how is that effective of, the rest
They
of the
love
world?
him over there. The people seem to really like him a lot.
Really?
I don't see why not. He seems like a good leader.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He's been very popular. Basically, the Chinese government derives a lot of its legitimization from economic development. So, in other words, as long as the economy is doing really well, the people are happy, and he's brought about a lot of economic growth. And one of the points about the Belt and Road is that their goal is to restore China to its rightful place of being the largest economy in the world and the world leader, because China's economy was the largest economy in the world in 19 of the last 20 centuries.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's where they're headed. So they have this plan, this Belt and Road Initiative. So what they do is they go to countries, basically northwest China. There's a province called Xinjiang, which is a Muslim province, and the people who live there are Turkic. So in other words, they look like sort of Turkish or Central Asian people. Mm-hmm. They have that look, and they have a similar language, and they're Muslim. That province links to the Central Asian republics, like all the Stan countries.
Right.
So the initial idea was go from Xinjiang to the Stan countries and start building highways and roads and telecommunications networks. And then from the Stan countries, then you go to South Asia, which would be India and Pakistan. India wants no part of this thing. So right now it's kind of going around India, and it goes through Pakistan. Now, one of the most important points why the Chinese government wants to do this is because Pakistan has a port called Garuda Port, which is one of the largest ports in that region, and that port links with Iran and makes it easy to transport petrol from Iran to China. So in other words, the oil would go across the sea there to Pakistan, and then by land through Pakistan across Central Asia and into China. And China is the number one importer of Iranian petrol. And so the Iranian economy is very much dependent on China. China is very much dependent on Iran in order to get the petrol. Without this overland route, the petrol has to go by sea, and then it passes through the South China. So number one, it's a much longer trip, and then number two, it passes through the South China Sea, which number one is disputed territory right now, and it's patrolled by a lot of militaries and is effectively under the protection of the United States Navy as well. And so there's always a fear that, like, if there was a war or there was a problem, that the U.S. could prevent shipping, prevent the petrol from reaching China.
Right.
And so by going overland, they can prevent that.
Well, it sounds like a fantastic idea for the Chinese.
Yeah, but the problem is with the Chinese is they count everything as one belt, one road, and it still runs at a deficit also.
Yeah. I mean, the original estimates were like $56 billion, and the new estimates are over $1 trillion that it's going to cost to do this thing. And they just and as Nick said, it's really funny. They just started. I talked about this in my book, but the things that they included could because there's no actual list of, like, these are the projects that are included in the Belt and Road, right? They don't actually have a list. They don't publish a list anywhere. So just every time something happens, they're like, "See, that was the Belt and Road."
Wow.
Like anything, in fact, Nick took me to eat at a Chinese restaurant in Flushing, and that was on the list.
Really?
No, I'm exaggerating.
Oh,
but,
okay.
Yeah, but just any Chinese project anywhere is considered part of the Belt and Road, particularly if it's successful, right? And then if it's unsuccessful, they just don't put it on the list because why would you, So it's been wildly successful.
Well, them going into America, is that part of OBOR?
So there's an expanded BRI map that includes the United States, but I don't know if it was actually produced by China. Who's that maniac in America that what's his name? Oh God!
Which?
Oh, he publishes all this horrible political stuff, and he's been in. Oh, wait, what's this guy's name? But anyway, he has a foundation, and he's in favor of the U.S. participating in the Belt and Road, and he published a map that shows like these Chinese highways and bullet trains and stuff going across the United States. Not Rush Limbaugh. What's this guy's name? LaRouche.
Okay.
Lyndon LaRouche.
I've never heard of him.
Oh, you serious? Yeah, I guess he was bigger in the 90s, but it was really funny. I saw this documentary, and I go, that seems really biased, and it seems really weird. And who produced this? And it was some corporation I'd never heard of, and I was really suspicious. And I dug, and it turned out it was owned by the Lyndon LaRouche Foundation. And he's just a maniac. He he tells people in the United States he suckers people in and tells them these horrible economic things are going to happen and blah blah blah, and basically wins them over to his cause. But it's all unsound.
So he's better off. He says China's the way to go.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and he's in
Wonderful.
favor of the U.S. participating. And the thing is, like, Europeans always criticize Americans. Oh, you guys have both lived overseas. You probably heard this argument, but inevitably you'll hear Europeans say to you, like, why is it in America there's no trains? You can go anywhere in Europe by train. Why can't you in America? And the answer isn't that we don't have the technology. I'd like to point out we're the only country that's been to the bloody moon. All right, like there's no question that we have whatever technology we want. That's not the issue. The issue is that trains have been proven to be economically unfeasible in the United States. Americans in general will fly. If it's a long distance, we fly. If it's a short distance, we drive. And short for an American is, 12 or 14-hour drive. That's
right. Like a day drive is a short drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's one day, it's a no-brainer. You're either driving or you're flying, And the thing is, if you got a family, if you're mom, dad, and 2 kids, and you want to go somewhere, you could drive in the car and pay 1 fee, or you could take a train, pay for 4 tickets.
Yeah.
And then when you get there, you got to rent a car.
That's right.
And this is the logic that Americans go through. And so, I'm talking over 100 years of research that every time this comes up, why don't we build trains? We need trains. Okay. And they'll do a feasibility research, and they determine that the only place in the United States where it would be logical to have trains is what they call the Northeast Corridor, which is basically New York, Boston, and Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C.
Right.
And that's where the trains are, actually. You could take trains there now.
Yep.
And it's marginally faster than driving.
and they're horrible. The trains are absolutely, it's abysmal what the train system is.
Yeah, well, yeah, and then the thing is that, so this is why we don't have these trains, and so Lyndon LaRouche, he takes a map and just draws a straight line. And I don't know if he actually had geologists and stuff working on this thing. God knows, like, he probably just took a flat map and drew a straight line on it when, you see, we could put a train here. Well, I don't know that you can, and maybe that's running through cities, and maybe that's running through somebody's house, and
right.
Up and down mountains,
Yeah, well, obviously, if America is not dependent on a infrastructure for trains, then what does exist obviously isn't going to be, I guess, the greatest.
Yeah,
the greatest
exactly.
shape, right? I mean.
Yeah, because the government has a limited budget to work with, so they got 2 choices. Let's say they could put money into schools, or they could go build trains that nobody's riding.
Right.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
And people in favor of the trains say, well, if the trains are better, people would ride them. Yeah, but you know what? Studies have been done, and it really looks like no matter how good the trains are, you can increase the ridership by like 8%. Because the other thing is, train tickets are really expensive.
Yeah.
I go from Washington to New York. I usually take the train rather than flying, and it costs very close to the same amount that it costs for the plane ticket, and timing is very close.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly.
It's wild, man.
Now the what was it called again?
The Belt and Road.
Belt and Road.
One belt, one road.
No, now it's called the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative. That's the name now, BRI.
Okay.
Oh, they changed the name now.
Yeah, they changed the name.
Now, what's China's movement in Africa these days? Are they moving more people in? Are they abandoning it? What's going on over there?
So Africa Again, it's outside of my area. I've only done a few papers on Africa. It's outside of my area, but what seems to be happening is there has been a lot of pushback globally. So right now, the book that I'm working on right now is actually my Belt and Road book, and I'm hoping to get that out maybe before the end of the year or early next year. But the Belt and Road, there's just a lot of pushback now around the world. Just one by one, I keep reading about countries that are just saying exactly what I just said. Like in Thailand, they wanted to build a high-speed rail from Bangkok to Chiang Mai. So the way these projects work, these Belt and Road projects work like this. Chinese government will go to, for example, Thailand and say, hey, we're going to build you a high-speed rail from Chiang Mai to Bangkok. And the Thailand government will say, we don't have money for that. China will say, that's okay, we'll loan you the money at 6.9% interest. And then but one of the terms of the loan is that we're going to send an engineering company here to build it. And all the raw materials are going to be purchased from China. And any Chinese company associated with this project gets 5 years that they don't have to pay taxes in your country.
Wow.
And at the beginning, a lot of these countries were, they're desperate. Number one, they're desperate for money. Number two, a lot of them were very corrupt. So any money that's flowing through, is good news, right? Because something could be stolen or siphoned off. Right. But a lot of the countries now are pushing back. They're like, well, this sounds like a terrible idea. Why would I want to do that? And in the case of Thailand, the train from there is a train that runs from Chiang Mai to Bangkok, and I forgot how long it takes. Maybe it takes let's say it takes 6 hours.
Okay.
And the bullet train was going to take 3. Well,
yeah,
I mean,
not a big difference.
Yeah, and remember too that if you think of time as money, in the U.S. the average person earns $54,000 a year. That's what is that? Let's call that $1,200 a week, or $1,200 a week is $30 an hour. So the average American earns something like $30 an hour. Mm-hmm. So your 3 hours is worth $90.
Right.
In Thailand, the average person earns $2 an hour, so your 3 hours is worth $6.
$6, yeah.
Yeah. And is that worth bankrupting your country?
I mean, has obviously Thailand didn't agree to that.
Yeah, they didn't agree to that one.
What countries have agreed to this insanity?
Well, no. I mean, Thailand is still participating in the Belt and Road, and there's tons of Belt and Road investment in Thailand. I'm saying this particular project that they said no, but they said yes to lots of other projects.
So they are going into debt to China.
Oh, yeah, everybody is. There's, I believe, 60 countries right now participating.
Yeah, actually, you're right. I got it up on Google here. It says nearly $1 trillion worth of investments currently exist in over 60 countries. Yeah. Wow. Yep.
So, and the average interest on these loans is 6.9%. And a lot of the countries, and a lot of them, the infrastructure is actually needed, right? Like Cambodia needed roads, needed dams, Laos needed hydroelectric and all this, and Vietnam they needed these things. Africa, they needed everything, right?
Right.
So on the one hand, it is good, right? It's good. It's going there. It's getting installed. So these are legitimate things they needed. The problem was these countries are poor, right? They don't have money. So the first place you go as a poor country when you need infrastructure, you go to the World Bank and you go to the UN and you say, look, we need infrastructure. Can you loan us money? Mm-hmm. The World Bank, the UN, these global organizations, they'll do a feasibility and they'll say, you know what? First of all, they loan money at 0.5% or 0.25% interest, right? So it's very minimal interest. And even them, they do a feasibility, they do a credit check, just like when you go to, buy a home in Canada or the States, they do a credit check. Right. They'll say to those countries, listen, we'd love to loan you the money, but unfortunately, you failed the credit check, and we're afraid that if we loan you the money, you're going to wind up in a debt crisis.
Yeah.
Okay? So then your buddy, China, steps in and says, listen, we don't care about your, we'll loan you the money. We're good. We're not like those Western organizations that are trying to control you. We're going to help you. We're going to loan you this money at 6.9% interest and no taxes for 5 years.
Do they believe it? People buy it?
Yep. Well, they do because they have no choice, But like Pakistan, for example, the first Pakistan paper I did 2 years ago, a delegation came from Pakistan. A delegation of intellectuals came from Pakistan to find out what the loan terms were because the government in Pakistan has made it illegal to criticize the Belt and Road or to discuss it or to challenge it. publicly.
Oh my
yeah.
God.
So Pakistanis, a lot of Americans can't appreciate what a close relationship the U.S. has with Pakistan. They don't know, but something like 1 in 9 Pakistanis has relatives in the States.
Yep.
And educated Pakistanis all speak very good English, and a lot of them speak, it's like American English because they're more, they have the British background because they were a British colony before, but they really are much more American in many ways, and they like America, and they're pro-American. Yep. And so the educated people in Pakistan are on par. I mean, the best business school in Karachi is a really good school. I mean, it's on par with anything in Europe or the States. And so these guys, they sent a delegation and to find out what their government is doing. Like that's sad to me that they using private money, flying around the world, a bunch of intellectuals trying to figure out what agreements their government has made with China. And so they had me do a paper. And in that paper, it was predicted that in 2020, when the Belt and Road payments start, Pakistan is already going to be in a debt crisis and won't be able to make their payments.
Right.
So that's what I said in that paper. But actually, this year, it already turned out that Pakistan has already defaulted, or it was in danger of defaulting on their loans, and they had to go to China and borrow more money to pay the old loans.
Holy shit.
Yeah, already, and the payments for the Belt and Road loans haven't even started yet. Those will start in 2020.
So they know that they're not going to be able to pay it.
Yep.
Why are they getting more money from China? I mean,
well, nobody else would loan them money. You can't go to the UN or the World Bank and say, "Listen, we're
Why
in
does
default
the US
of our
loan
other
it to
loans."
them? We give them a lot of money, Pakistan, already.
Well, so that's another problem. So Donald Trump cut military aid to Pakistan, and I understand why he did it from an economic standpoint. Donald Trump said, "Pakistan, you're my employee. I hired you to fight, terrorism in Pakistan. I gave you money to do that. You failed in your task, so now I'm not going to pay you." That's how Donald Trump looked at it, like he was firing an employee, a security guard.
Right.
Unfortunately, when you take money away from Pakistan, all you're doing is pushing them closer to China because they still need the money, and China's the only person who will give it to them.
So China's becoming sort of the top pimp in the world economics, are they not?
Basically.
How's Russia and China relations these days? Any idea on that one?
So
they seem to be getting along.
Yeah, there's like this global chess game, right? And the big players are the U.S. and China, and then you got the secondary players that are India, Pakistan, and Russia. And basically, the rule historically, like for hundreds of years, has been, or for 200 years, the rule has been you're kind of aligned with either India or Pakistan because they hate each other. So you're aligned with one or the other, but not both. And then Russia swings between the U.S. and China because Russia and China also hate each other. So it's like. So that goes back and forth, but then sometimes hatred of the U.S. unites them, and they just kind of go back and forth like that.
Well, I was looking at a little article on that, the Belt and Road, and it talks a bit about how part of the BRI is to spread Chinese culture. Have you heard much of that?
Yeah, so that's called a soft power objective. So there's this thing called the Confucius Institute, which are these Chinese language schools that have opened up all over the world. They're funded by the Chinese government. And basically they went to universities all over the world and said, look, we'd like to open a Confucius Institute on your campus, and we're going to pay for it. And then you can offer Chinese classes to your students. So a lot of universities agreed. But then in the U.S., students were going in these classes and they were asking questions like, what's the deal with Taiwan? What's the deal with Tibet? And the Confucius Institute would say to them, well, listen, we have rules in here. And one of them is you can't criticize China and you can't ask about Tibet or Taiwan. Oh. And so a lot of universities in America kicked the Confucius Institutes off the campus. Certain countries, like I believe Sweden, some of the Scandinavian countries have actually completely banned the Confucius Institutes.
Right.
Which the U.S. generally won't do because we generally won't make blanket bans on things because we want to have multiple voices. But you can't have a voice on campus saying don't say this, don't say that. The other thing is they found out that they were spying on the Confucius Institutes would have the list of all Chinese nationals that were studying at that university, and they were spying on them and reporting on them. And they were getting in trouble, or they were demanding, or they would find out where they were doing internships and then demand that they bring certain information back to them.
Damn.
Yeah, but if you're Nigeria or if you're, Zimbabwe or Ghana or something, and China comes to, look, we're going to build a school and give scholarship, of course you agree, right? Because people need education.
Because you basically don't have anything.
You have nothing, right? So this is still better than nothing. Look, yeah, I did. Last week was the Cambodian elections. Two Sundays ago was Cambodian elections, and so one of the big media asked me to give my opinion on Chinese investment in Cambodia, and basically what I said was that, look, for all these poor countries, they need everything. They need roads, they need hydroelectric, they need schools, and if on some, all the problems that you and I are identifying with these Chinese investments, these are like, first world problems.
Yes, agreed.
These aren't things that when you're actually struggling to eat, or you can't go to the capital city because, there's no road.
Yes.
Right? Or you're poor, like in Cambodia, like I interviewed farmers that they're growing, they can't sell their goods in the city because they have no way to get to the city. But if they did, they got 5 times the price.
Right.
So by building a road, now you've made it possible for these people to sell their stuff. They're all going to make more money. They're going to live happier. The kids are going to be, So on the whole, you could make a case that good, bad, or even with negative credit terms, even with spying, even with everything else, it's still better to have this than to have nothing.
It seems that way. I mean, especially for a lot of these countries, it seems like I suppose time will tell.
Because I don't know that the average, you've lived in Indonesia and Nick in Cambodia, I don't know that the average farmer is worried that when he sends his kid to the free Chinese school that the kid's going to be told, don't ask about Tibet.
No, fuck.
That's not something he's worried about, and the Chinese, and then they do things similar to what we do. Like they do send medical teams into the provinces that give people, inoculations and mosquito nets and things like that. I mean, they do these things, So I don't want to make the case that China's the evil bogeyman, right?
Do you think China's spying on you?
Yeah, of course.
They're probably listening right now.
Yeah. There's no doubt in my mind. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. But I'm also kind of done. So
okay.
Under the terms of my contract, I can't quit. But if I get kicked out of the country, I can leave. So.
So just figure out a way to get kicked out. It's not that hard, I don't think.
No. I'm sure if I put my mind to it. I've been kicked out of better countries than that.
Yeah, no shit. It's not too hard to get kicked out of a country. You just have to let your visa expire and then, I don't know, take a shit on the front step of immigration. Gun.
So tell us what's going to be your next adventure. What do you got cooking up in the writing department?
So in 2010, I believe, I wrote a book on Cambodian martial arts. It was the first book ever done on Cambodian martial arts, and I published it through a boutique. I went with a boutique publisher because they were specialized in martial arts books, and I said, well, you know what? Let me give this a shot. Mm-hmm. And it turned out they totally mishandled the book. I think 40 copies were sold, and it's effectively out of print. You can actually see a picture of it on Amazon.com, but it says like not available or something. So anyway, turns out that was probably a good thing. I was a terrible writer back then. I'm a much better writer now. So my recent project is that I'm rewriting. I don't even want to say rewriting that book. I'm rewriting it and updating it. So that book ended in 2010. So I'm updating it now. So I've been in Cambodia the last few weeks doing interviews and updating and working on that book. I'm really excited about that book a lot because it's again, you want to add to the body of knowledge. I don't have kids. And everything I own is made of plastic, and I don't own a lot of stuff. So when I die, there's not going to be much left. So if you add to the body of knowledge, that could be your legacy, right? Your contribution.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So
for Cambodia, what's that?
I was just going to ask about the time frame.
Yeah, so the book, I'm not sure. I got into it. I thought I was going to try and get it done by the end of the year, and now I'm thinking that I want to go back to Cambodia and do more interviews. So it'll be next year sometime. I really, Cambodia is amazing. The thing I like about Cambodia is that I was the first foreign student of Cambodian martial arts in 2004 or 5 when I met the Grandmaster. And kids that were kids then grew up, became black belts, got married,
right.
had kids, and the next generation came, and the next generation, and we're working on like the third generation now, and I'm watching them go from the people I knew in 2004 were all born immediately after the genocide, and so they grew up with horrible, just terrible hardship when they were young, and now they're all adults, and I'm watching their kids are, don't know hunger. Their kids are getting proper nutrition. Their kids are going to private school. A lot of them, they're either in Chinese school or English school. So, everybody has because of the cell phones now, everybody has access to information. And it just warms my heart when I go back and I just see how things are going in Cambodia. That as bad as things, and again, this is another example, as bad as things are, all the negative things you can point out about the government, about Chinese investment, at the end of the day, the average person is doing better today than they were in 2004.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially places like Cambodia, man. I mean, I saw it from the side of being in Indonesia, and I think it was after the fall of Suharto in '98, there came a middle class. There was like the nouveau rich that kind of started developing, and you see these parents that when they were kids they didn't have they had nothing. Now they've got all this, and now their kids can have it, and that's all they want. They just want their kids to have a better life. It's hard to kind of argue with that,
Yep. Yeah, no, it's amazing. About 3 or 4 years ago, one of the kids that didn't speak any English and lived in a temple with the monks, giving him a little bit of food. He was involved in martial arts, and then he wrote to me about 3 years ago, and he said, he wrote to me in English, and he goes, "Brother, could you correct my English on this script, in this movie script?" So I'm like, wow, he's learned English. I opened the script, and the first sentence says, "Drone shot of Angkor Wat."
Of what?
And I just, drone, a drone?
Okay,
drones?
yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's a drone aerial shot of Angkor Wat. And I'm just cracking up. I'm like, this is a kid who was living in a temple that didn't speak English, didn't have anything in his pockets, owned nothing, and here he is writing this thing. And the first thing is a drone shot, that they have a drone now, and they have a camera, and he's doing an aerial shot of Angkor Wat. And I'm like, oh my God. And it's just it's just so exciting to go back every time and see them doing a little better.
Yeah, for sure.
And you've definitely contributed to that with your, going to all those different schools, doing your lectures. You have some great lectures up on YouTube. I really enjoy watching those.
Oh shit! I'll have to put a link to those too.
What direction is China going to be going in? Do you see any type of a recession? Can we expect a Chinese slowdown anytime soon?
Yeah. Well, it's already slowed down. Basically. From my perspective, and obviously different economists have different ideas, and a lot of them are smarter than me. But from my perspective, it seems the Chinese economy peaked in 2015. 2015, a lot of the stereotypes you have about Chinese buying things up and the investment and a lot of that actually happened in 2015 and has slowed down dramatically since then. And just in my man on the street. Sort of research here, like one of my wrestling teammates from the university, he lives here in Weifang, which is the big city next to where I work, and his dad's a real estate developer, and the family just has no cash right now because his dad built this 20-story office tower, and nobody's buying the offices, so there's definitely been a slowdown of people buying real estate, investing abroad actually, it's slowing down. China is very concerned about the tariffs because the wages in China, for being the second economy in the world, the wages in China are preposterously low. I mean, $9,000 a year.
Right.
To think about who was second before Japan? Did you ever for a minute think of Japan as poor or Japanese people as poor?
Right. Yeah, no.
Right? Never, right? And before Japan, it was Germany. And did you ever think of Germans as being... No, of course not. So now we have the world's second economy is a bunch... it's a country that's effectively poor. You know, it's like where the people are poor.
Yes.
But for as poor as it is, the wages are still a lot higher than Cambodia, Vietnam, whatever, Indonesia, Burma. So the question is, when will manufacturing leave China and move to these other countries? And they're right on the cusp. They're literally, I don't have the exact number, but somebody I'm sure has calculated the exact number that when wages increase in China by 8%, that's going to be the signal that all the garment factories will leave. And already garments, and I'm saying garments because garments apparently, and again, I'm not an industrial economist, I deal with trade, but apparently garment factory is very cheap to set up, whereas like an automobile factory is very expensive. Right. So I've talked to Ford, for example, and they're like, you know what, pretty much no matter what happens, unless you know, there was a 200-300% increase in cost, basically Ford wouldn't move the plant from China to Vietnam because it's just too involved. But garment factories are already leaving because it's a very low end, there's very little markup. And the one I told you, the cell phone or iPod assembly, where they're only getting $4 for the assembly. Mm-hmm. You know what? That is going to slowly start going to Indonesia,
right?
You know, in Vietnam. You know, people, and again, Chinese people are better educated on average, better trained on average. But you know, you can compensate for that, right?
Well, what about Foxtron? How much do you know about Foxtron, about the assembly for Apple products, where people are forced to work overtime in the jump out of the building?
Oh, come on. It's ridiculous.
It's probably a leftist myth. It's probably a leftist myth.
No, it's real, man. Come on.
No, I mean, it's real. I don't know why you're concerned about it. I don't. People have been jumping out of buildings in China for centuries. I don't blame them. I mean, I've stood on the ledge a few times. No, look, the American companies, like when you hear that, you know, Nike workers were beaten or something, like, it's not a Nike. It's not really a Nike factory. It's not really a Foxtron factory. It's not like there's an American overseer and he's this fat Southern sheriff guy with a cigar and a whip and he's beating people. It's that American companies make contracts with local Chinese companies. There may not be any foreigners even working in that factory, and it's going to be run at Chinese standards, whatever the norms are for that culture.
Yes.
And
see, I disagree with all of this. You see, like right there, where there's an American company that's involved in China on some type of level like that, I'm not comfortable with that. And I think I'm very pro-isolationist when it comes to like things like that. American companies, you know, it's like it reminds me of like England in like the 19th and 19th century, where it's, you know, this type of Dutch. What is it? What was the Dutch trading?
Dutch East India Company.
Yeah, Dutch East India Company. Yep, it's like a form. It's like a form of multinationalism on that, in that aspect. You know.
Well, you've lived in Cambodia, and when you ask what's the average salary in a factory, they tell you it's $186 a month. That automatically assumes 2 hours of overtime every day, I believe, and all day on Saturday. But that's what people do. That's what Asian people do, and particularly poor people. You could say, well, you can stay home and get no money, or you can come to work and get overtime. They come to work and they get overtime. It's the norm. So I don't understand why he was forced to work over. If you didn't want to work, you could just quit, right?
Right.
He could quit, and somebody else would go there and work overtime. Yeah. And it's not that Nike or Foxtron or whoever, that some American went there and said, you have to work overtime. It's not like that. It's these people work overtime.
They want them. They need the money.
They need the money.
So
it's that simple.
In the chats, we've got a question. Where's all the big money in China coming from?
My house. No. So what happened was people weren't allowed to own real estate. You're still not. Actually, do you know that Chinese citizens are not allowed to own land? I don't know if you know that.
No, I didn't know that.
And they can't actually own real estate. They just own leases on real estate.
That's the same in America.
No, in America you have private ownership of land and private ownership of houses, and in fact it's one of the reciprocal areas that Donald Trump is upset about, that Chinese people anyone can go to America and buy a house, but
yeah. Do you have any idea what's happening, Antonio? Do you have any fucking idea, man? It's insane. They're overpaying hundreds of thousands of dollars for dog shit. It's insanity, man.
which plays into the question that the guy goes, where's that money coming from? And the answer is the initial wave of wealth came from when the government allowed citizens to start owning these leases on real estate, effectively owning real estate, but not really.
What year? Can you give me a year? When did that happen? What year? So I get a time frame.
About 20 years ago.
Okay, great.
Maybe
Wonderful.
a little more. So basically what happened was you were assigned a house, by the government before, right? And you lived in it. And at some point in the 90s, I believe, the government just sort of passed a law and goes, okay, if you're living in a house, you now own it.
Right.
And that's when a lot of people became wealthy overnight. And you had cases of literally like a farmer with chickens, and his house was in the most expensive district of Shanghai, or what would become the most expensive district of Shanghai, and he sold it for like millions of dollars. Or people used to, before the one-child policy, Chinese families were huge, So if all the children were married and living apart, then the family collectively owned, eight dwellings, right? So they would, sell some of them and live in some of them and whatever. And that's where the initial wave of wealth came from. And then the other area where wealth comes from is that people, state-owned companies, for example, you were working at a state-owned company, you were a manager, and suddenly the government waved its wand and said, this is now a private company, and you as manager, you get 15% of the company.
Right.
And so these people became wealthy overnight. And then maybe you're really lucky and your factory operates in a protected sector where no foreign companies are allowed to enter, or no Chinese companies even. And maybe you suddenly have...
That's really, it's really interesting what you're shedding a light on right now. Very interesting.
Yeah. So a lot of people just became wealthy sort of overnight like that.
So by giving ownership of the land to the people, they generated all that wealth very quickly.
Yeah, except they don't really own the land. But yes, yeah. Exactly. And also factories. So it was a big thing. Like seriously, you're the manager. You're some government official. You're the manager of a state-owned factory, and then they come in and they go, okay, this is now a private factory. You're going to get a salary, for the first time in your life, and you get a percentage of the profits.
That's great. That's better than the way that Russia did it.
Yep. Yeah, everybody. Yeah, there's so many dissertations comparing the Russian transition to the Chinese transition.
The Chinese transition was far more smoother.
Yeah, much better.
You mean a transition out of communism?
Yep.
Yep. And again, this is why I don't want to paint China as like the bogeyman or the bad guy, or because one of the points that China makes, and you could argue this either way, one of the points they make is that Russia made a mistake by reforming the economic system overnight. I'm sorry, reforming the political system overnight.
Right.
And then that that wrecked the economy, right? And just made chaos. Whereas China slowly reformed very little reform on the political system, but reformed the economy slowly under the existing political system. And that's kept the country from falling into chaos like Russia did.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Well, it's quite hypocritical, though, that the Chinese are allowed to own real estate in America and Cambodia and other countries, yet foreigners can't go into their country and buy land.
Yep. Yeah, and and that's why I don't understand when the left is criticizing Trump. These are all realities that I deal with on a daily basis, so I'm not sure what it is that they're seeing. It happened again last week. A really intelligent guy that I know, that he's logical about everything else, but irrational about his hatred for Trump. And so he sent me an article. He's like, well, look at this. All of our allies are negotiating trade treaties without us. I'm like, yeah, every country in the world has trade treaties. They don't all involve the United States.
Yeah.
We're not part of everything. We're not part of the EU. We're not part of, tons of stuff, right? And I found the top.
Why not?
We should be. We should be in everything.
We should be part of the EU.
One world, Antonio.
We're not part of the British Commonwealth.
Mm-hmm.
You sound like a bigot.
Whoa. Yeah, we make fun of the left a lot in this channel.
Well, for all those out there, me and Antonio actually very good friends. And we met each other in Cambodia quite some time ago, and it was a weird party. And there's this guy who's, this stout guy, looked real strong, glasses. I go, I heard him speaking, and I'm like, who is this guy over here? He sounds like me. And then, sure enough,
He sounds like me.
That was the same thing. I heard Nick's accent all the way across the room.
The accent stands out. Yeah, definitely. It stands out, man. That's why people compare you to Mafia all the time.
Can't help it. Sorry, Toots. Donald fucking J. Taking over. China's paying for it.
Get me their names.
Share. So you're in Indonesia. Of all the Southeast Asian Far East countries you've been to, which one do you take kindly to the most?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Cambodia's got a special place in my heart. I really enjoy Bali. I'm really close friends with one of the wrestling masters there and his family, and I really enjoy visiting them. Vietnam, I like Vietnam theoretically, but I just never had a very close relationship with Vietnam for some reason. It never clicked.
Yeah.
Malaysia. I have a lot of good, and Malaysia's the opposite. I don't like Malaysia very much, but I have very good friends there, so I enjoy going there, and I teach, for free during my holidays and things like that.
Best food, best cuisine.
God, I used to hate Malaysian, and now I like it so much. After I went to India, I don't know what happened. I went to India, I came back, now I like Indian food.
Yeah, you used to hate it.
Yeah, and Malaysia, you get great Indian food.
It's awesome.
It's the number 3 ethnic group there. So I tend to eat a lot of Indian food when I'm in Malaysia.
That's one of the best
Cambodia
things.
by far, but Phnom Penh by far is the best eating city, like probably in Asia.
KL, man.
Yeah.
I think KL.
Nah.
No, it's not.
Nah, KL had a dream.
Got everything.
KL had a dream that it had better restaurants than Phnom Penh, and when it woke up, it apologized.
I've never been to Phnom Penh, so I can't make a comparison.
Great Chinese food too, man. The Chinese food in New York City is terrible compared to Phnom Penh Chinese food.
Oh, Malaysia has great Chinese food, obviously, because 38% of the population is Chinese. So where I live in Malaysia, so I did live in KL and I did live in Selangor, but I lived in Selangor in a Chinese area. But where I live generally is in a place called Johor Bahru, which is almost exclusively Chinese, and I teach also for free in the neighboring city, which is like 90% Chinese. So I live, and it's really funny because I live in Chinese communities overseas, and I'm a lot happier than I am in China.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Digressing here and talking about something else. I want you to talk about the Phnom Penh slide, because me and Ayam discuss this quite often on this channel about.
Well, listen, I didn't want to bring this up, but I figured this is a good. These things should be aired in public. Okay, Nick is friends with a bunch of degenerates in Cambodia. No, seriously, not horrible degenerates, but there's this thing we talk about called the Phnom Penh slide, which is a guy comes to Phnom Penh or Bangkok, right? It happens in Thailand, and I bet it happens in Bali.
It does happen in Bali, man. It does.
So they go there, right? And they're like in their 40s, and they got X amount of money, and they're going to stay for a month. And by the end of the month, and they're living in a hotel, and they're going to the bars. And then they get caught up in all the sex and all the alcohol and all the maybe drugs and whatever. And then when the month is over, they don't want to go back. So they decide they're going to stay 6 months. But now their money is running thin, right? So they move out of the nice hotel into the guest house. And then instead of drinking in the bar, they're drinking at like the thing where you sit outside.
Yeah, 7-Eleven or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah.
Cafe Terrace. And then at the end of 6 months, then, the guest house is too expensive, and sitting out there is too, and it just keeps going down and down until you meet these people that are trying to live on like $1 a day, $5 a day. It's like, oh my God, what are you doing? Yeah. And they're buying, they're buying like bottles of liquor and drinking that rather than
cheap wine.
And it's just, yep. That's the Phnom Penh slide, and a lot of them get involved in drugs. And the other thing is that a lot of them make these terrible economic decisions because they went there with savings that they were going to use for vacation, and then they stay until they've spent that. Then they've spent their long-term savings. Then a lot of them cash out their retirement. They sell their house.
Damn.
And they stay there until it's gone. And
it happens so often.
Yeah, there's so many. And the New York Times in like 2005, I believe, New York Times contacted me. They wanted me to do a story on this, and they actually had some numbers, and they said that the average American man that moved to Thailand was something like, I don't remember his 40s or 50s, like 48 years old, whatever he was.
Makes sense.
And they had like $500,000 on average because they sold their house. It's usually after a divorce.
Yep.
So
makes sense.
You sell your house, right, because you have to pay out your wife, right? So you got half the money from the house. You got your retirement, and they go to Thailand with $500,000, and it took on average something like 14 months for them to wind up with nothing.
Wow, that's incredible.
Wow,
man. Mekong Farong in the chat says Luke lives off 3 pesos a day.
I told Nick this story. I was in the Philippines, and there was this place that had a breakfast buffet for like whatever, like 1/37th of a dollar or something. Whatever it was. And it was like this huge breakfast buffet, and I'm in there and I'm eating and I'm going like, wow, this is great. And I was poor back then. Like, this was back when I was like really poor, and I still thought it was absolutely reasonable. And this hideous American hippie with like braided armpit hair comes into this restaurant, walks up to the buffet, picks up a banana, and goes, "How much is this banana?" and the staff are just looking at each other like, this isn't a fruit vendor's. Like, we don't sell bananas, So the guy just makes up a price off the top of his head. He's like, I don't know, 2 pesos. And she starts screaming at him. She's like, 2 pesos? I can go to the market and get a whole bunch of bananas for 2 pesos. And she like throws it down and storms out.
Wow.
So I stop eating. I run out on the street and I catch her. I go, excuse me, miss. Hi, I saw what happened in there. And I just want to say, it might be time for you to go home.
Absolutely, man. That was a woman.
That was a woman.
Wow. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, what you guys call the Phnom Penh slide, I saw that in Indonesia all the time. It's everywhere. It's in all the major cities. Bali, it's in...
Well, Thailand is definitely the worst.
Probably.
I mean, it blew... I thought Cambodia was bad, and then when I got over to the other side of the border, I was like, oh my God, there's way more. It's like that movie, The Beach, with Leonardo DiCaprio, and those guys just never left.
Yeah.
That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a lot of it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I saw a lot of it in Indonesia as well. I mean, I knew a guy who was from France originally that ended up in immigration jail in Yogyakarta, and then he escaped. And he was on the run.
Oh my God.
And he was on the run, like he couldn't leave the country. He was a fugitive in the country. He had nowhere to go. Pretty crazy.
Jesus.
Yeah. So yeah, I know what that.
Yeah, in Thailand, I think one of the reasons why they wanted me to do that story about Thailand, and I wound up not doing it because I couldn't. Yeah, I have a lot more information about Cambodia than Thailand, but one of the reasons why is that there are apparently bars in like Pattaya and Phuket and these kind of places where like the bar has had like 50 owners in the last 8 years. And the story is like the same story, like the guy that comes over there with $500,000 and then, suddenly he's having sex with all these attractive 20-year-old girls and, and drinking and whatever, and he's really happy. And they go, well, listen, I was getting ready to leave. I could sell you this bar. And then you'll have income and you can stay here. And so he buys the bar and then, discovers that it's actually losing money. And,
They keep selling it over and over and over.
Yeah, and one of the selling points is really funny, but one of the selling points, they'll say to him, hey, do you want to buy this bar? And he'll go, well, is it doing well? Oh, are you kidding? It's been here for 20 years.
Yeah, open the books. There are no books. Just buy it.
Just buy
But
it.
it has been there for 20 years. It's a true story.
Oh, I'm sure. Sure. Cabin Boy, he's saying, Cabin Boy, he's not an MMA fighter. He's asking if you are an MMA fighter.
Yes, so about MMA. So I did Martial Arts Odyssey, and I used to be a professional. I boxed professionally, and then I boxed in the Army mostly, and I had a few professional fights. And then in 2011, when they had the first ever professional MMA fights in Malaysia, they contacted me to be a guest judge, referee, whatever, like, because of Martial Arts Odyssey, and they wanted me to be a guest, and I said I wanted to fight in it, and so they allowed me to fight, and then and I won my first fight. I lost my second fight, and then I just started fighting professionally, and then I moved to Malaysia, and I lived in the gym, and I fought MMA. So you can check, SureDog keeps records of professional fight records. So I have a fight record on SureDog for professional MMA. So I had 8 wins and 1 loss, but it was all in 1 year. It was in 2011, 2012, and then the end of 2012, it was like June of 2012, and then I started thinking that I needed to get back to work, and that's when I came to China.
Okay. Someone ask Antonio if he knows John Nutt. Who's John?
Wow,
Nutt?
I recognize that name. I don't know what it's from. I kind of recognize the name though.
Okay. Well, he recognizes the name. Who's John Nutt? Mekong Farang. We don't know. Cabin Boy asks, who is your coach?
Melvin Yo was and is my MMA coach. Patty Carson was my boxing coach. Was and is, always will be. Patty Carson trained me for my professional fights that I had in Asia for my boxing, and even when I was fighting MMA, I'd fly to Cambodia, and Patty Carson would tune me up on my boxing for my MMA fights. My first MMA fight was sponsored by K1 Fight Factory, Vietnam and Phnom Penh, so they trained me for my first fight. And then shortly after that first fight, I met Coach Melvin Yo, who lives in Johor Bahru, and then I moved to his gym, Ultimate MMA Academy, and I lived there actually lived physically in the gym for a year, just slept on the mats and trained and fought every month. Yeah.
So
and that's where I go now. And if you follow me online at all, and you see like I'm in Malaysia teaching MMA or teaching wrestling, that's where I teach because I lived there for a year, and so I always go back now and I teach for free. And I'll spend like a month there.
Right on. Mekong Farang says John Nutt is an MMA promoter in Thailand.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never. You know what? I never had any involvement with MMA in Thailand. There was the old production there was called Dare. That was the first one. The new one is Full Metal Dojo, and I have not been involved in either of those promotions. I fought in MFC, which is the Malaysian Fighting Championships. I fought in UB, which is Ultimate Beatdown, and I fought in what else? Oh, F3, which is and F3 and UB are still ongoing. They're based out of Malaysia, but I never fought MMA in Thailand. I had 2 professional boxing fights in Thailand, though.
Okay. Cabin Boy, I did put a link to his YouTube channel, to Antonio's YouTube channel, in the low bar of the video. So if anybody wants to go check out his videos, the link is there. You can see. I mean, you've got MMA stuff on there and some talks.
Yeah. Yeah, my fights are all on there, and then tons and tons of Martial Arts Odyssey, where I just go around the world training with different masters and different martial arts.
Right, yeah. It's on the channel is Brooklyn Monk 1, all one word. Put the links below. When you were in Bali, you were there for fighting?
Yeah, well, I didn't fight. I was there for training. So training. I went there because there's a Balinese traditional wrestling art called Mapuntigan. So I went there to train Mapuntigan, and I lived in Kuta right next to Synergy, which is MMA and BJJ. It's really a BJJ school. So I lived there. I trained BJJ every day, and then I went up to the mountains and I'd wrestle with the Mapuntigan, and came really close to the master and his family. And they took me around to a lot of other martial arts there. I got to train Sanda and several kinds of Silat.
Nice.
And there's videos.
Okay, I'll have to check those out. Did you hear was there?
Oh, how do you not know that?
I mean, there's other French MMA fighters that have been shot. There was the one like he tried to intervene. I mean, he was doing a good thing. He was trying to intervene. Somebody was hijacking something, and he caught the guy in a rear naked choke. But before the guy went unconscious, he just held the gun, behind his head basically, and killed the French MMA guy. Yeah.
Where was that?
What happened in Bali?
Okay, in Bali, this French MMA guy just started lipping off the police. He was outside of his house. The story goes that he was outside of his house, but there's video of it actually. He was standing in front of his house yelling and kind of making a scene on the street. And I think he had a knife, if I'm not mistaken. I think he just went fucking nuts. It's the Phnom Penh slide, maybe. And he started going nuts. He was being aggressive and loud, and I think he had a knife. That's what they say. And then the Balinese police rolled up, listened to him shout for about 20 minutes, and then they all just shot him.
They shot like 100 bullets at him.
Yeah, man.
They still kept running with everything.
Well, was he on drugs? I mean,
I don't know.
Well, no,
maybe.
he lost his mind. He started like going to restaurants and not paying, and the locals just had enough of him.
Yeah,
and they were like, "That's it."
Yeah, he's an expatriate that just kind of lost it. Like it's over. Time to go home.
Right, an Indo slide.
Yes, yeah. Time to go home.
It's really nuts, man. It's nuts. Well, and then they become so. I mean, the first step is like they become petty, right, about money, and they become really petty about it. And to convince themselves that they made the right decision, they have to be very anti-American. They have to just keep telling you how horrible. Like to hear people like Nick, like the crowd that Nick hung around.
No, he's really ripping on that.
You would think that when you.
I really don't think they're that bad.
Like to hear those guys talk, you would think no one in America has a job. Everyone's unemployed. They're all living on the street, and thank God I'm over here in Cambodia living on $1 a month.
Right. Jeez, who the hell were you hanging out
Paradise.
with? Who were you hanging out with over there, Nick? I mean, when in my 13 years in Indo, I went through stages where I hang out with a little bit less desirable people. But for the most part, I mean, I spent a lot of my years married there, so it kind of drags you out of those scenes.
Yeah. No. You know what? I'm just teasing about Nick and his friend. Like, no, they're not degenerates in that sense. I just mean,
I know what you're talking about.
I just meant the money.
You had to go with my friend who worked for the German NGO. That was an interesting battle between the two of you.
Yeah. That struck a lot of chords, though, because I did 4 years of undergraduate/graduate school in Germany, and so I just had enough of their freaking self-loathing.
Well, I've seen you debate a lot of different people. It's been really cool watching.
I told one of Nick's friends, this is funny, Nick, remember? We were in the cafe, we were having some debate about economics or something, and I said, well, you said blah, blah, blah. He goes, no, I didn't. And I pulled out my phone, I go, I recorded it.
Yeah, you did, right.
Oh, no.
He recorded it right in front of him, then like 10 minutes later, he flip back and play it over again. It was funny.
What were you discussing?
That was with Chipo, wasn't it?
What's that?
The old guy. Yeah,
it was.
He's abusing a 75-year-old man who smokes pot all day long.
No one told him to do that.
That was great.
He was German?
No, it was an American guy.
Oh, American. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
no, my friend from Germany was telling Antonio that's the America's fault for why Germany is like self-loathing and self-hating.
Yeah. Yep.
No, was it what was the plan?
The Marshall Plan.
Marshall Plan, yeah. The denazification like completely wrecked Germany.
Yeah. I believe it. Mekong Frunk says Germans are the worst expats, but I don't know. I met a lot of good German expats.
No, I like all the Germans I met.
Germans are actually good expats. Sometimes I disagree with them, but they're generally well-behaved people.
Yeah.
The worst. I hate the Dutch the most.
The worst expats are Chinese.
Well, except that they're not really expats. So you're like the worst tourists are definitely
Yeah, the
Chinese.
worst tourists. That's what I meant actually.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you don't get Chinese people just turning up and living in Indonesia for no reason, you know.
Yeah. No, they don't do that. You're right. They're the worst tourists. That's the more accurate.
Do they
statement.
consider themselves expatriates?
I don't know.
Yeah. In economics, before we discuss anything, we have to define terms, right? So we would have to define what is an expatriate, and then when we're saying the worst expat, then we have to define what that means, and then we can analyze it. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No,
because America. I mean, there's a lot of terrible American expats. You know.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I hate to say it, you know, but there are. There's just a ton of them that are terrible. But a lot of Brits are horrible.
Yep.
And
They're debauched. They're so debauched.
Yeah.
in places like Bali, you know, they're punching each other up. There's some really scary Australians in
Oh God.
There's a lot of Australians in Bali that are only there because you can get steroids. They're like lifting weights all day and taking steroids and going to the bars at night. I'm like, they're terrifying.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's some really horrible Australian.
Yeah, I had a
expats.
knife pulled on me by a drunk Australian on Riverside. They're nuts.
Yeah, but Nick, we don't want to judge everyone who pulls a knife on you. That's your problem. That's your problem. You keep judging. You lump them all together, all the people who pull a knife on you.
Cabin Boys, if you want to ask questions to Brooklyn Monk, just type them in the chats there, and we'll get them. We'll get them to him.
Me too, or
Yeah, sure. You can too.
Speaking of Me Too, no, we're not even going to get into that. So anyway, I want to wrap up the whole China thing. So the slowdown's already happening. All right, we can rest assured that Trump is going in the right direction, which is good to hear. So I mean, let's wrap it up with North Korea. What's going on there? Any more progress?
So the North Korea thing, I don't understand why people are criticizing Trump. I keep reading things. They're criticizing him. They're like, oh, everything's not solved yet, so Trump's a failure. I'm like,
I know.
It's a process, you know? It's a process, step by step. First, we get a meeting. You know, first you get a meeting. We did that. They like each other. Awesome. Yeah. Now we'll slowly start the process. And a lot of the criticism is predicting, and like, well, you know, North Korea is just going to lie to us. You know what? They probably are. Yeah. That's part of the process. First, because before they weren't even lying to us, right? Now at least, okay, they'll lie to us.
Look, Antonio, you're not understanding, though, man. It's Trump's fault. Don't you get it?
Like, yeah. If it hadn't been for Trump, there wouldn't be a North Korea.
You know, there was a lot of good memes that came out of that meeting. A lot of good internet memes from the Kim Jong-un meeting with Trump. That was amazing. If anything, at least that'll go down in history.
The memes.
The memes, yeah. What about China's relationship with North Korea? They must have one.
Is it still through the back door?
Yeah, China's basically North Korea's only ally. Right. And North Korea is China's ally. It's one of the few that's actually an ally. And the U.S., rightly, and particularly Trump, has been very smart about saying to China, look, you're North Korea's ally, help us on this North Korea thing. And it's a way of building a consensus between the United States and China. And it helps a lot with our relationship with China to say to them, look, we have a common problem. Because China doesn't want North Korea acting like a maniac. They do a little bit, but they don't want it to go so far.
That's what I...
No, only up to a limit. I mean, China doesn't want chaos. China wants to make a profit, you know?
They do a business.
One of my economist friends in Chicago, he's really funny. He goes, yeah, you know, North Korea is like your crazy friend Mike. Like, you know, some of these people want to screw with you, but they won't because, you know, Mike. Like, yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
well,
you know,
look, I got a question. Do you see a pushback now from Japan becomes another province of China will we see Vietnam and Thailand step in, perhaps?
Well, Vietnam hates China, and so one of the reasons why the U.S. and Vietnam are into the American orbit of influence, right? There's the American sphere of influence. Cambodia, I wrote a paper called the Cambodian Litmus Test, and the point of the paper was that Cambodia is probably one of the countries that's deepest in debt or deepest, in their, the influence by China, and yet Cambodia refused to adopt the Chinese currency as their currency. Cambodia refused to accept terms that they had to keep a certain percentage of their foreign reserves in Chinese currency. So even Cambodia is fighting back. And it's very important to remember that these things are very complicated. And when you read the news, you need to read all the news and then find some aggregate, because a lot of people are going to tell you Hun Sen is doing everything China. Well, no, it's not true. Actually, Hun Sen is fighting back on a lot of points and pushing back on a lot of points. And everybody is.
Right.
I think the Cambodians have the ability to just go and steal it, like they always do.
Yeah, well, I mean, they could. But it already happened now in Sihanoukville. They've already opened a Chinese security company. So, yeah, once you have Chinese security guards, I mean, that's really scary. That's.
Well, you do know about the military police for Cambodia. They were trained by Chinese while I was there.
Yeah. No, well, China gives military aid to Cambodia. They give training, they give patrol boats, all sorts of things, which is fine. I mean, and the U.S. does that with our allies,
Could it ever turn hot with China and Thailand and Vietnam if it keeps happening with this type of, again, this type of progression with China?
I don't think so. I don't even believe that the world, in general, right, the world doesn't see major shocks. In other words, huge single events that shake the world, they aren't that common, and they're almost never predicted. Like the Great Depression, the Spanish flu, like the things that cropped up and killed tons of people generally are not predicted. And I think that in general, and also China is just interested in making money, right? So what would be the pushback? The pushback might be that Cambodia starts saying no on more and more projects, and China says, okay, well, how about these other projects? And the same thing in Thailand, same thing in Vietnam. I mean, I don't think it's going to be like somebody's going to come to war, or they're going to make a blanket ban on Chinese. Well,
we are, me and Ayam have discussed many times on this show that we're past the point where you'll see like a type of massive scale of war or anything like that. I mean, everyone just wants to make everybody just wants to do a business, right? And no one really wants to hurt each other.
Yeah, people don't. Yeah. Most people don't want. Most people don't benefit from that.
Right.
That the only reason.
Very few.
Yeah, there's very, very few people benefit, and that's why we have that. That's why we have conflict, because somebody's making money off of it.
All Cambodia would have to do would be to strictly enforce their. If they wanted to slow the Chinese investment, right? All they'd have to do is strictly enforce their granting of Cambodian citizenship. Just tighten up on that, and then Chinese people couldn't buy land and property, and that would slow it down, right? So, and I'm sure at some point you're going to see those kind of pushbacks, and if Cambodia did that, China wouldn't invade, they wouldn't attack them,
No, it'd probably just be a failed business. But I mean, they're already in debt anyway, aren't they? Yeah. So Hardy's in the talk. He says, are interest rates going to stay low forever? And I'm assuming he's talking about the rates that the Chinese are putting on in the BRI, these countries.
No, he's probably talking about U.S. interest rates.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah, I would assume that's what he's talking about. So U.S. interest rates will stay low until economists, the economic advisors of the president, believe that the economy is growing too fast, what they call heating up, or until we see inflation. And then the interest rates will go back up, and that's just normal economic cycle. And regulating the interest rates is one of the tools that the federal government has to help regulate the economy. And if you look at the U.S. economy, historically, we've had very low inflation. Inflation in the U.S. tends to be like 2%, less than 3% on average, and which we're much better on inflation than most other developed countries.
Right. Mekong Frong says, I am pro Hun Sen.
So am I.
8% GDP growth over 10 years is remarkable.
Well, okay, so first of all, Cambodia's GDP growing by 8%, it is remarkable, except that if you think about the stage of development that Cambodia is at, 8% is normal at that stage. And every other economy that's at that stage of development also grows by those kind of numbers. Number one. Number two, when you're starting with $1 of income, it's a lot easier to go from $1 to $8 than it is to go from $54,000 to, think about that. For the U.S. economy to grow at the same rate as in Cambodia, it's impossible, right? Because it's already too big, it's too developed. But as far as being a fan of Hun Sen, I would say that what is true about Hun Sen, so for the listeners who may not know Cambodia, Hun Sen is the Prime Minister of Cambodia. He's been ruling Cambodia for 34 years. He's imprisoned or banned. He's actually banned the opposition party. He's imprisoned opposition leaders. They've killed or threatened to kill other opposition leaders. And he's basically going to be president in perpetuity, or prime minister rather. But the flip side is Cambodia has not had a civil war since 1979. It's livable. Definitely the life of the average person, the quality of life has improved dramatically. Standard of living has improved dramatically over the last 20 years, and he's kept order. So you could make the case that it's better to have a strong man, even a bad one, and have order rather than have chaos. And one of the examples would be Iraq. Is Iraq actually better off today than it was under Saddam? And the answer is probably not, right?
No.
You're probably better off having a strong man, but at least you have stability.
Gaddafi. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Hun Sen has now got the world record for longest running dictator. I mean, loosely defined dictator.
Yeah, he is. Longest running head of state.
There you go. Longest running head of state.
Yeah. Well, because His Majesty, the King of Thailand, died 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other one is Queen Elizabeth. She's on that list.
Suharto was on that list.
Was, right.
Was. He's not on it anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you see now every country seems to embrace democracy, where there's no long-term rulers anymore, which I find to be quite fascinating. The concept of a king or a queen that rules, and it's in the family bloodline, so on and so forth. You don't have that anymore.
Not really. Not like it used to be.
Right. So now every country is like, what is it exactly? They're clones of Europe, and if you're not a clone of Europe, you're somehow a bigot, racist, xenophobe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it. I don't get it. Oh, I'm serious. Like, you see every country has a parliamentary system or some quasi version of it, so.
Yeah. They still have royalty in... Does Thailand still have royalty?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Thailand's a monarchy. Cambodia is also a monarchy.
Okay. Yeah, Indonesia still has royalty, but it's kind of provincial.
Yeah, I don't think that... because you got a bunch of sultans in Indonesia, but I don't think that the form of government is constitutional monarchy. I think it's a
democracy.
Yeah, Malaysia is.
Is it?
Yeah, Malaysia actually has. They have provincial sultans, but then they have an agong, which is basically like an emperor of the whole country.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know that.
It'd be a good time to it'd be a good thing to do right now. Ayam is pulling up that article of the former prime minister's wife.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Which country, sorry?
Of Malaysia. Yeah, I've got it. Give me a second to find it.
Yeah.
It was is it the recent prime minister, isn't it? Or
well, they had the election, right?
That's right.
Antonio. And
What's that, Malaysia?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know they brought back the old guy who's like 92 or 93 years old.
Yes.
Okay, so the prime minister that got was knocked out. His wife spent like I don't know how much was it, AM? Millions upon millions of dollars on shopping.
Let's see.
And I think she's arrested.
Oh yeah, they threw
But
her in
she
jail.
had coupons for a lot of that shopping.
Yeah, we because my channel was originally MGTOW, like kind of a men's channel. We've discussed a little bit about women politicians. You heard about South Korea's first women prime minister, right?
Yeah, this is all outside of my area of research, so I actually don't know anything. I'm aware that South Korea exists.
Well, she ended up in prison for corruption.
That's like Thailand's female prime minister as well.
Oh, Yingluck.
Yeah.
What happened to her? She's not coming back or anything, huh? What is she in exile?
You know what? I really don't know. I mean, Thailand has a military government, so I'd assume any former prime minister is sort of in exile.
Yeah, they've been there for. It's been what now? 2-3 years with the military junta.
Yeah, maybe longer. Yeah, it's nuts.
Were you able to find it, Am?
I'm looking. Where the hell did it go? Here we go. Yeah, hold on a second here. Yeah, Malaysian PM Najib's wife linked to 41.5 million worth of jewelry bought with IMDb funds.
Oh my God.
nearly US 30 million of funds stolen from scandal hit Malaysia Development Berhad was used to buy jewelry for the Prime Minister's wife. Wow, including a rare 22-carat pink diamond. So, but I mean, if you talk, we know that you were talking about what China's up to now as far as the BRI project. But when you get into a lot of these other Southeast Asian countries, corruption is kind of part of the culture, don't you think?
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
It's just, it becomes part of their just. It's right now. For example, in Indonesia, there's a real push to kind of reduce or eliminate that concept from the culture. They have what I think it's the KPK. Did you hear about them when you were there?
No.
It's just a kind of an anti-corruption department that was added on to the government. So, yeah, it's insane. So they're
and who's watching them?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Well, so in Cambodia a long time ago, I used to work with the Ministry of Interior, right? Mm-hmm. And at that time, for $5,000, you could become a police officer, and to get into Ministry of Interior was a bit more. Mm-hmm. And they just started the anti-corruption unit, and my friend, it was a colonel at the time. Mm-hmm. We're driving past the anti-corruption unit. He goes, "Man, those guys are the elite. They're the best. You know, I wish I could get a job there." I go, "Why don't you apply?" He goes, "Oh, you know how much that costs?"
Oh, that's great, man.
They're in a position to steal the most.
Yeah.
Oh, how about that? The Russian tycoon that lives off of Sihanoukville, and the son is a police officer.
Really?
You don't know about that? There was a guy who was being persecuted by Putin. He bought an island off near Koh Rong, and his son bought a police. You know, I guess he was able to be a police officer.
Yeah, I almost when I worked there in 2004, they were trying to get me onto the police through Ministry of Interior, and part of the plan was because I was going to have 8 guys assigned to me, but they were ghosts. So the people who were doing my appointment would then collect the salaries for the 8 employees that worked for me.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Oh, here it is. Russian tycoon's son ousted from police force.
Yeah,
Cambodian daily. That is funny, man.
Yeah.
pretty wild.
Yeah, apparently, so one of my friends wants to make a movie now about how the Chinese mafia pushed the Russian mafia out of Sihanoukville. Apparently, it used to be controlled by Russian mafia. Now, obviously, the Chinese control everything. So,
Damn. I wonder how much of an influence then Chinese mafia has within the framework of the BRI.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
I don't know. I honestly know nothing about Chinese mafia. Any kind of crime. Like, I don't know about that. That's not something that's involved in my research. And the thing is,
they run rampant in Cambodia, man.
yeah, I really don't know. And I don't even know what that means, because a lot of these things are done with government money, right? So the government's not going to support criminals, right? So I think people will need to define terms before we can even have a discussion. I need to know what they're considering to be mafia and what do they mean by that, and
Right. Yeah.
Because think about it. First of all the banks in China, effectively all the banks are state owned, right? And all the banks that are funding the BRI are effectively state-owned banks funding the BRI, loaning money to state-owned construction companies and sometimes private companies as well. So I just don't see how you would have criminals that are involved in that.
Well,
Corruption and things.
Not so much mafia, but general corruption on the business level.
Yes. Yeah, without a doubt. But
while I was there, I went to visit a garment factory, a Canadian-owned garment factory, and as I pull up, there's this other factory that is smoldering, big, massive factory, and had Chinese writing on it and everything. I go and I speak to the plant engineer. I was like, "What happened over here?" He goes, "It was a Chinese business, garment factory burnt down," and I'm like, "And they fled the country." That was it,
Yeah.
Luckily, no one got hurt, but people tend to get killed during these things.
There's a lot of crime now in Cambodia and financial crime that involves Chinese preying on other Chinese. So actually, that was one of the mafia things actually that I did read, was kidnapping Chinese investors.
Wow. That's in Cambodia?
In Cambodia, yeah.
Yeah, it's the Wild West, man.
Yeah.
I was another time I was at another garment factory way out in where was it? It was in Kinsfine? No, Sphyrien. And I was way out there, and they're to fuel the boilers, the fuel for the boilers to keep the plant going for the garment factory. They were burning old garments and wood.
Wow.
Big factory. Again, it had at least 200 to 250 people inside of it.
Russian embassy car hits a drug squad car in an attempted hit and run. That's from Cambodia.
Oh,
so apparently, really? Apparently, I guess to help some drug dealers get away or something, they rammed the police car.
Shit, man. So wait a second. What was the place you said used to be owned by the Russian mafia and now the Chinese?
Sihanoukville.
Okay.
But it was never owned by the Russian mafia. But the Russian mafia operated there. I guess
their presence.
Well, the tycoon got taken out. When the tycoon got taken out from that island, I think Putin finally caught him. And he had to get sent back. So after he left, I think that's when the power and the money started drying up.
Yeah. Well, Mekong says, I'd rather bribe police than live in a society that does everything by the book. There's
good.
Well, there's
lots of criminals feel that way. I don't know what to say to those answers. I get those questions. I get that from people all the time. I'd rather pay $2 to the police. Blah blah. I'm like, okay, well, what you're telling me is you want a society that doesn't have law and doesn't have order, and if you have money, you can buy off the police. Like, that's not a good thing.
That's not a good system, no. But I can understand what he's saying to a certain degree. I mean, I wouldn't want to call a society like that home necessarily, but it's certainly convenient if you're like visiting and.
I would say if they pay me enough money right now, if someone gave me enough money to go back to Cambodia, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah. Well, it's just a different thing. It's a different thing to kind of take advantage of a system like that, and then it's another to be a victim of that system. So.
Right.
Well, yeah. And again, like at the early part of this discussion, when somebody said something like, America's, I forgot what you said, in debt or has financial problem or whatever.
Right.
You get people saying like, I don't know, America lacks freedom or there's oppression. And you need to define your terms. You need to define all these terms, and you need to tell me who you're comparing us to. Mm-hmm. But in America, your children go to school for free. And the school that they go to is based on your address. And that's it.
Yeah.
If you live in this address, you live in this school district, that's the school your children go to for free. And if you don't want your children to go to that school for free, you have lots of options. And some of them are cheap, like Catholic schools. Catholic schools accept Jewish students, they accept Muslim students, they accept everybody. Just it's run by the Catholic, but they're really cheap, but they're really good. You got private schools that are very expensive, but you've got options. But anyway, your children go to school for free, and you assume, it's an assumption that is true 99% of the time, that your children go to school for free, they're allowed to take the exams, and if they pass the exams, they graduate.
Yeah.
Okay, that system I just described to you is not true in about 80% of the world's countries.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
All right? So if you're telling me that you'd rather live in a country where you could bribe someone so your children go to school, why? Why would that be a good system? And how does that help poor people?
Mm-hmm.
That brings up something where how much privatization in Cambodia there is, where a construction company also owns a kindergarten.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So and this is a problem. So people on the extreme, I don't even know what you call these people. Who are these people in the States? Like they don't want to pay taxes, and then maybe they're even growing their own food. Like they want to be off the grid. Like the people that were heavily in favor of Bitcoin in this, going to be off the grid. These kind of people.
Oh, listen, Antonio, Ayam's spoken to Sovereign George a couple times.
Yeah, we've had him on the show.
Oh, that's awesome. Actually, hey, listen, listen, my offer was real. I will pay George's flight and his visa fees and his hotel. I will pay all of his expenses to come to China and fight me in a public fight. And that was for real. I mean, I don't talk shit. Nick, you know me a long time. Do you believe I talk shit?
Do you talk shit? You're always putting people in the corner, though. You back them up. Yeah.
But I mean it, right? We're in agreement, though, that it's sincere. I'm really serious. I'm very happy because George promised. Well, to me, anything that comes out of your mouth, by definition, is a promise. He promised to knock me out and rape me anally. That's what he said. And he has not made good on that promise. And so the best way for him to do that, would be to actually fight me in a cage, and I'll tell the referee, listen, after he knocks me out, he's going to rape me anally.
Don't stop him.
So,
in order to stay Ayam, he's been trolling Sovereign forever. He just keeps saying, George, you still haven't promised, you still haven't filled your promise. By the way, here's another Bitcoin article that you're an idiot.
Is that what the disagreement was over?
Basically. Bitcoin, yeah.
But the thing is, I can let something like that go after 20 to 30 years, so he's only got 18 years left. But seriously, I'm really serious. So I will pay for his plane ticket. I'll pay his plane ticket, and in fact, I'd probably pay for both of you because I'd want to see you anyway, and you could goad him into it. I'd probably pay for both of you to come over here. I'd pay for your hotel, pay for everything, and George fight me in a public fight.
You heard it here, folks.
Yep. George, where are you? Fred, George, where are you guys? Fred Schroeder, let's fight.
Film it. Make sure you film it.
Yeah, I always fight.
I got a Bitcoin on it.
Well,
Bitcoin completely falling apart. Let me tell you something. This past year, the stock market has not been friendly to me. It's been really bad since the beginning of the new year.
That's no good.
It's rough. I know. Tell me about it. So it's really crazy, right? You know, it doesn't know what direction it wants to go in. It looks like it really doesn't. Can't make up its mind.
Mekong Frank says,
So that Russian tycoon, by the way, I just looked up the story. The Russian tycoon you're talking about was also in Sihanoukville. So you're right. That might have been, right, the period where Russians were sort of influential there before the Chinese. His name is Nikolai Doroshenko. And it says here, his son was fired from his post on a provincial police force for failing to show up for work and not signing the national anthem.
Right.
I'm sorry, not singing.
Not singing, yeah.
Yeah. No, because they have this thing at the police, like, because I know a lot of ghost police, but they have to show up and sign. Once a week they have to sign in or whatever, sign the attendance or something.
Right.
To keep getting their salary. That's what I thought it said, but it actually said singing.
I tell you what, though, I felt very safe with the, you know, as crazy as this may sound, every time I saw the ghost police, I actually felt pretty safe. They seemed like they really, you know, they wouldn't allow anything bad to happen and stuff.
what do you mean ghost?
You
Like
can't spot them, but you could. I actually could spot them.
Like
Oh,
plain
no,
clothes?
No, we're talking about two different things. When I said ghost police, it means police that are on record and receiving a salary, but they don't really exist.
So they don't.
I was talking about something different.
So they're not actually. They don't do a job. They just get a salary. And they call
Yeah,
it.
you know, like on The Sopranos, like they negotiate a deal with the union, and they're like, "I want 5 jobs, 3 no work, 2 no show." You know,
Yeah.
so those would be ghost employees. 3 guys who go to work but don't have to do anything, and they get a salary, and the other 2 don't even have to come in.
Right.
Well, everybody's friends with Hun Sen, and someone's working for Hun Sen. Am I right or am I wrong?
That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what they do is, so part of the corruption, right? They'll promote you to sergeant. Well, let's say a sergeant is in charge of 30 guys. I'm just picking a number, but your 30 guys don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So you're promoted to sergeant. You're in charge of 30 guys who don't exist. So you go collect the salary for the 30 guys every month.
Right. Shit, that's a good job.
Yeah, but it's really expensive now to get those jobs.
Right.
I had a friend in 2004. The family went through the whole steps to get him up to a judgeship, and it had to be $5,000 to get onto the police, so much money to go to the police academy, so much money to go to the law, whatever it's called, where they get their legal training, blah blah. And all said and done, it did become a judge, but it took $50,000 at that time. At this time now, I've heard it's in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow. So you got to pay for those kickbacks.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, that's it, because you're going to be in a position to steal large sums of money, right?
Who do you pay that money to? I mean, does it all just go to these? I mean, the let's say it costs, I don't know, $500,000 to.
So let's say it costs $5,000 to become a cop, right?
Okay.
So you pay $5,000, you become a cop. Your salary is like whatever, $50 a month. The person who appoints you on the police force might steal your whole salaries, right? So that's his thing. You say to him, "Look, I'll be a cop on your force, and you keep my salary." And he says, "Okay." So he gets your $50 a month. Now you're a cop. So you go to work in the morning, you don't know what to do. You just at the office. And then somebody goes, "Well, listen, there's a street corner where you can stop people and charge them money for not wearing a helmet." Oh, that sounds like a good deal. How much is that? Oh, it's $20 a day. So you go to that street corner, you stop people, collect $2 from everybody who's not wearing a helmet, and at the end of the day, you hand $20 to the person that gave you that street corner.
Okay.
And that guy has 20 street corners that he's in charge of, right? So he goes around every day to the 20 street corners, picks up his $20 from each cop. He goes to the person over him and gives that person like 50% of that money.
Right.
That's a definition of a mafia.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it functions just like The Sopranos.
I wonder if the military is the same.
Yeah, same.
Same. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, no, there's more generals. There's more generals in Cambodia than the United States.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a fact.
Well, and the funny thing is that there's admirals, right? But there's no ships.
Yeah, there's no navy.
I've seen
there's
those
a navy,
admirals
dude.
too, man. I've seen them. I've seen
Yeah,
them.
Navy's huge.
It is huge.
Navy's huge. And I saw them in a parade wearing their life preservers. I'm like, yeah, they need to. There's no ships.
They have to swim everywhere.
They're going to inflate those life preservers.
How is that so unsustainable for Cambodia? You know, I've also, Hun Sen is still a socialist / communist, and a lot of these projects that go uncompleted in Phnom Penh get subsidized by the government.
Yeah. Yeah, when I worked for Ministry of Interior in 2004, they sometimes still referred to the CPP as the communists. But I haven't heard anybody use that term since then. But
well, Baconic Properties, that big one that looks like a dragon, if you go inside that, I mean, again, I haven't been inside in a long time, but when it was so-called completed, you still had light fixtures hanging out, you still had sheetrock powder all over the place. It was clearly incomplete, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I have no idea how this works. That's something I would probably need to spend some time to figure out. I don't understand the whole construction thing because it's everywhere. It's in China. It's in Cambodia. You know, you got these buildings under construction for 10 years. They never finish them. They never rent them. I don't understand, you know.
Well, a lot of it is people that invest on projects that aren't even being constructed yet. I had one Indian friend get cleaned out for trying to buy a property, so-called property in Pattaya, and the project was never complete. I guess the sponsor he fled and took everyone's money.
I stopped into I was thinking of investing in Cambodia. I wanted to buy an apartment. I stopped into a condo sales office, and they handed me, it was like a menu, like 3 floor plans. They go, which one of these do you like? And I said, that one. And they go, okay, that one's $25,000. And she like immediately starts filling out like a receipt, God. You know, like I'm going to hand it. I'm like, well, shouldn't I go see the property first?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh.
There's no standard to these at all. There's no fire protection on them. They're really dangerous.
Oh, I imagine. I mean, but again, that's similar to a lot of pretty much every Southeast Asian country, man.
Yep.
Police mafia, corruption.
Yeah.
Mekong Frong says, I just defined my terms. Bribe is greater than taxation.
What is? I'm sorry?
Bribe is greater than taxation.
Bribe is greater than taxation?
That's what he said, yeah.
Okay. What am I going to say? I mean, if you want to be an idiot, you're free to be an idiot. That's the beauty of our system, you know?
Well, let's go back to what Ayam stated earlier. Is it, do you actually own your home?
Of course you do. In the States?
What if you stop paying your property tax?
You know, if you stop paying your property tax, you don't lose your home per se, right? And it's not automatic, right? It would be the same as owing any money to the government. At some point, I guess they could seize your assets, they would sell them, they'd pay off the debt and give you the difference. So actually, it's not that you just lose your home because you didn't pay your property tax. Is that correct? I mean, I would assume that that's how that works.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure. I'm not sure what would happen if you just suddenly stop paying your property tax.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like renting where if you don't pay your rent 1 month, you lose the apartment. It's not like that. It's like, yeah, if you're, yeah, exactly. Yeah, they don't, British soldiers don't come and burn your thatched hut.
And it would be British soldiers for sure.
Drive you off your land. Your father's been damaged.
Well, check this, Antonio. You know, I've been toying with this, been pondering this for quite some time. Is Long Island demographics are, you know, baby boomers and, you know, people that are, again, much older. I don't see how this is sustainable where you have actually, you know, young people that are really in the city. And you researched this, that even with immigration, you still are losing, you know, the state of New York is still in decline.
So, yeah, I did just a short paper on Long Island, just a really short one, but it was basically that the population of Long Island has decreased by 10% over the last, you know, X number of years, but it turns out that the population of young people has decreased by 20%, and then the young people that graduate university, that only a small percentage of those that graduate university elsewhere will return to Long Island. And it's mainly because it's just too expensive to buy your first home and really expensive to live on Long Island. And the people that left are being replaced largely by immigrants that are in a different socioeconomic level than the people who left. So in other words, you have college-educated, upper-middle-class kids leaving and then being replaced by maybe low-income or uneducated foreigners.
Well, what's wild with that, though, is that the local, your county taxes, your town taxes go to the schools, and Long Island is very expensive as far as public education goes.
Yeah.
The highest, I think, in the United States. So you spent all this money, educating them to go to good, to get good jobs and stuff, and they wind up just leaving.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, New York, it's not, Long Island's not the absolute greatest place in the United States. Like I hear people using the superlative all the time, the best schools, the highest salary. It's not true, but it is true that it's very good, right? It's excellent, and you're right, though, the property taxes are high, schools are really good, and the kids generally get into good universities, but then they go out of state, and then they don't come back because there's no impetus to come back and live on Long Island. Salaries on Long Island are actually low. Like average income is very high, but a lot of them are.
Well, yeah, I have to travel an hour and a half to get to work.
Yep.
And I get punished for trying to get closer to that, getting closer to my job with city tax. See, where I am, I don't have to pay city tax. If I were to go closer to my job, I'd be wind up paying a third tax. I pay federal, state, and city.
Jesus.
Right. Yeah, because New York has New York is a state that has a state income tax, and then New York City has its own income tax as well. So people who live in New York City are triple taxed.
Crazy, man. Mekong Frunk says the talk Antonio gave to Cambodian kids showed Cambodian kids have a better grasp of economics than American kids.
Well, yeah, and again, I mean that's just not the case. No, I gave a talk at a school called the Delighting School, which is a flagship program. It's the only one in existence that these kids are being taught economics from grade one. It's a foreign program, totally sponsored by private money, foreign money, and what happened was I was doing research on the Cambodian economy, and I came across a book called The Economy of Cambodia. And when I looked at who wrote it, it was written by these 13-year-old kids at this school. I was like, oh my God, I have to contact this school. So I contacted them, and they invited me in to give the kids a lecture. And kids were amazing. Their English was great. They were really smart. They asked a lot of questions. They were great. But please keep in mind that it's not the average Cambodian kid, not by any means.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that in America, first of all, in New York City, in Manhattan, there is a high school. There's an insurance high school. There's a high school where kids study insurance for 4 years to be actuaries.
Wow.
So I mean, there are great high schools in America too. But this is one of it's the only school
international school. Do they call it an international school?
No, it's not. It's something completely different. It's because generally international school means that locals can't go there. So all these kids, 100% of them are on full scholarship. It's privately funded by, I believe, one family, and to the tune of $2 million a year to keep this school open. And these kids are just getting amazing education. But the point is that their whole education is focused on economics, and it's all taught in English.
Huh. That's interesting. In Indonesia, the best schools obviously are the private schools, the international schools that are that are funded by America, like American companies. There's a lot of different countries invest in education in these Southeast Asian countries. America's got schools there, Canada, South Korea.
Well, what are you saying, Ayam? That Lucky Institute isn't a good school?
What do they teach? Gambling?
Yeah, in Cambodia, I mean, the average school in Cambodia is quite terrible, and the really common in Indonesia. Yeah, and really common everywhere, Indonesia, everywhere. This is probably similar in Indonesia. that the kids, in theory, public school is free, but they actually have to pay for it. And then the teachers give what they call additional lessons or extra lessons, and those cost money. And unless you attend the extra lessons, you don't get the answers to the exams.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or if you don't buy lunch from your teacher outside of the school, you're also going to get a failing grade.
Yeah. So, which is what I was saying just a minute ago, that the idea that your kids go to government school, that school is decent, and all the kids can go. I mean, you're talking, a handful of countries where this is true.
Yeah.
And I just like I got upset with that self-loathing German guy, like I get really upset with self-loathing Americans. I'm like, look, you have it so good. You have it so good. Have you been overseas? Have you seen what it's like? You have it so good. Stop complaining. You're right. It could always be better. We'll complain and we'll try and make it better. But don't tell me that, you'd rather have your kid go to Cambodian public school rather than American public school.
Well, exactly, Antonio. I'm in Canada. The reason I'm back in Canada is because I had a kid in Indonesia, and there was no way I was going to let him continue to go.
And you were worried they'd find you?
I wanted my kid to go to school here. Right?
Yeah, sure. Understood.
So I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's funny. I told you those kids that grew up in Boktor, the Cambodian martial art. The ones I knew in 2004, they're all grown up now. They have their own kids, and a lot of them, their kids go to private Chinese school because parents know it's good education. It's hilarious. My friend was telling me, he's like, I wish I could help my son with his homework, but I don't speak Chinese.
Right.
But he sent his kid to the Chinese school because it's good, or they send them to Catholic school. I had a lot of Indonesian students that were just exceptional, and every one of them came out of Catholic school. And they weren't Catholic. None of them were Catholic.
Yeah, they're probably all Muslim.
Actually, they were mostly Buddhist because they were Chinese. Okay. They were Chinese Indonesians.
Oh, yeah.
So they don't want to send their kids to the local, Muslim schools. They send them to the Catholic school.
Well, the Muslim schools are horrible, man, in Indonesia.
Yeah. Same thing in Malaysia.
Yeah.
Same thing in Malaysia.
I've taught in some of those madrasas, man, in Jakarta. They're horrible. Absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
Half the 50% of the education is just is religion.
Yeah. I worked with with the Malaysian government. I worked with Tekun, which is the part of the government that makes the loans to Muslims. And every one of those important guys, every one of those datos had an assistant that was like a 20-year-old guy that, drove the car and, driver, assistant, whatever. I'm sitting in a room full of 20-year-olds. They don't speak English. I'm thinking, what in the world is there a room full of 20-year-olds who don't speak English? And then they didn't know how to use computers. I'm like, what the hell? Like, room full of 20-year-old Cambodians, they would all speak English and know how to use a computer.
Yes.
Why not?
Yeah, it's pretty bad in Indonesia. I know for sure with the education system, and it's not just the Muslim schools. I mean, the public schools are horrible as well.
They don't take it serious, man. I was a teacher too, man. I was at PUC, and I had some good students, but out of like a class of 25, I'd say only 5 of them were good. The rest of them were stupid, and then there was like another 5 that were just completely retarded.
Right.
Oh, wait, Pani Sastra?
Yeah.
Yeah, you taught at Pani Sastra. Didn't you also teach at Lim Kok Win?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And so Pani Sastra is the best private university in Cambodia, and one of the only universities in Cambodia that the credits would actually be recognized everywhere. And
they were average kids. They were average Cambodian middle-class kids. They were spoiled also, spoiled rotten. They would find any excuse not to go to school. They would all copy each other. The copying each other was just rampant, and there's no way to really enforce anything, because if you were to try to enforce rules, you're the bad guy. So you have to be more of a class clown and let them all pass, or else you lose your job.
Yep. And when it rains, Nick.
Oh God.
What?
Show up as a teacher. You show up. The room's empty. Well, it's raining. Oh yeah.
Right. So there's no school because it's raining.
Yeah. I'm like, well, doesn't it rain 3 months a year in Cambodia? Yes. Like, okay.
Long breaks for holidays, and long breaks in between, changing courses.
Yeah.
Changing grades. You just couldn't really go anywhere. So the only thing I could really do as an educator was really teach them pronunciation and how to at least put together an email. They trying to get me to teach them essay writing in 3 months. I go, are you crazy? Absolute insanity.
That's
man.
university, eh?
Yep.
Yeah. When I taught in Cambodia in 2004, there was a statistic that something like 80% of university students in Cambodia at that time had never attended school.
Wow.
I don't know if it was 80%. Maybe I might be exaggerating the number. But because what happened, because of the genocide. I mean, the country was poor to begin with, and people talk about the pre-genocide period as being this golden age, and that it wasn't that great. I mean, only 3% of the population could read.
It was rock and roll.
But then with the genocide, you just had most people had never been to school.
Yes.
And so then in the early 2000s, when they first started kind of having universities and things, they made arrangements, or they made exceptions that people could attend university who hadn't been to school, because you desperately need to educate people as quickly as possible. And so you had people that the first time they ever sat in a class in their life was at university.
Yeah.
And it was PUC.
Yeah.
PUC is one of the first ones. Yeah.
And you were teaching them, Nick.
I had a lot of fun teaching them. They were great. They weren't that bad. A lot of them, I have confidence in being successful. A good chunk of them.
I had a lot of respect. I honestly, you could complain, right? Because compared to students somewhere else, they didn't know things, and there's a lot of things in Southeast Asia that it's just common in Southeast Asia, except for Vietnam. It's just common that they don't really value education, and they don't, work that hard. But there's a lot of things where I really respected them. I'm like, you know what? This guy lived through this genocide. He's never had any education. Here he is trying to get a degree. You know what? Good for him. Really, I respected that.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Hey, I got a great story for you guys. I'm in a coffee plantation in Mimot. Antonio, you know where Mimot is, where Hun Sen's from?
Okay.
Mimot. It's about 10, 15 kilometers from the Vietnamese border in Khmom. A little past Kampong Cham. I see a Cambodian on a dirt road on the highway holding a Trump Art of the Deal book. I pointed at it, and he's looking at me with a big smile. I go, "That's right, buddy. That's right."
No, I just had an interview with the think tank in Cambodia, and one of the relationships I'm going to have with them is that every time I come to Cambodia, I'm going to teach some courses for their graduate students, because I love them. I mean, I love the fact that these kids, they're probably the first generation of their family to even go to school, and they're also going to be getting their master's degrees now. And they're learning to do academic research in English, and I just respect them so much, and I love them, and I love how interested they are, and the questions they have for you, and just
yeah,
it's really
try. They try hard. Yeah,
really trying.
Yeah, they're coming from a situation that is a lot less privileged than, say, the average American kid.
Yes.
Mekong Frank says, "Find me a 13-year-old American who is not a socialist."
That's pretty funny. Mekong Frank, I like you. Yeah, well, but I don't mean that in a platonic way. No, you know what? I like you. No, that's a good point. So from what I understand, and you guys would know better than me, from what I understand, so these millennials seem to be extreme socialists, but I've heard that the Generation Z, which I guess are under 15 right now,
Okay.
that there's a pushback, and those kids are going far to the right as a pushback, that they hate the millennials, and they hate the extreme liberal, and they hate the what do you call it, political correctness and all this stuff. And I heard that there's a real pushback among those kids.
Yeah, I've heard about that too.
Yeah, there has. Big time in Europe. Europe, it's even worse.
It's really hard. I'll tell you, for me, I left North America in 2002, and I came back 2016, and holy shit, has it changed! It was incredible. All my friends that I used to know, they're all communists. It's like, what the fuck happened to you guys? It was incredible.
Listen, look how good it is in Norway, asshole. Like, come on, Sweden. We can be Sweden. Tony, am I right? Don't you want to be Sweden?
You know what? Every time I only pay 28% income tax, I'm really wishing it was 64%.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there was.
I lived in Germany. So I lived in Germany for 4 years. I went to school over there, and their education system is really great. I think that I felt like they were way too far left, and there's a lot of self-loathing. But their education system was great. Their health system was good. Their social system was good, and Sweden, of course, is famous for having this incredible social system. And Canada, is left of the United States. And I always felt like the answer, Sweden's too far, maybe Germany's too, Canada might be the right answer, like some sort of a balance. Maybe the U.S. is too far right, and then maybe Sweden's too far left. And so the right answer is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, well, the one thing I often hear from Americans is Canada's got a great healthcare system. But it doesn't really. It's not that great. I don't know why they get the idea that it's great. It's basically, we have socialized healthcare, right, in Canada. So if I want to go to a clinic, it doesn't cost me anything, right?
Right.
I don't pay to see a doctor if I feel sick just to go to a clinic, right? And but I still got to pay for the medicine, and it's not cheap.
But I think it's subsidized though. I would assume that medicine is a lot cheaper in Canada than it is in the States.
I'm not too sure. Like I don't really know.
Listen. I had to buy eye drops when there's a lapse in my coverage for pink eye drops. Eye drops.
Uh-huh.
Antonio, how much do you think they cost?
$100.
No, not in Cambodia.
Ayam?
No,
Cambodia
it's
is
their prescription.
It's a prescription. Yep.
$150.
$120.
Okay.
Yeah, I had the same thing. I had ringworm, because I wrestle, so you get ringworm, and so in the States I had to get $200 to get a doctor. It cost $200 to have the doctor tell me it was ringworm, and then $200 for the medicine. Which in Asia, I walk in, he looks at it, he goes, "Oh, that's ringworm. You have to buy the medicine. It's $3."
It's $3. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Same in Indo. But here, I mean, this is my experience with the system since I've been back. The socialized medicine here is, it took me 1 year to get a family doctor. 1 fucking year.
So I just checked. Prescription medicine is dramatically cheaper in Canada than it is in the States. I would assume it's subsidized.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. The other thing is one of the weaknesses of our medical system is that if you get really sick and you need to go to the hospital or emergency, it might be hours before you're seen.
Right.
Like you could be dying.
Yeah, that's not fun.
That's no good, man.
Wait. Tell Antonio about when you want to go see a doctor and they put the woman and the immigrant ahead of you.
So before I had a family doctor, which again I had to wait in line for like almost a year to get a family doctor, right? So before I had a family doctor, I had to go to a walk-in clinic. I went into a walk-in clinic. I had an eye infection, and I went into the walk-in clinic, and I was standing in line. There was a lineup. It wasn't open. It was closed for like the lunch time, and I was lined up like 20 people deep waiting for the clinic to open. And then when it opened, this lady came out and goes, "We can't take you all." And so she went, and I wasn't at the back of the line. I was kind of like in the middle, like maybe 4 people ahead of the back. And she walks up to the back of the line, grabs a bunch of women and children, puts them in front of me, and kicks me out. That's socialized medicine, man.
That happened to me on a lifeboat one time.
Oh, really?
No, I kicked women and children out. There wasn't room for me.
Yeah, man. Jesus. So, then I just had to suck it up. Oh, well, I guess I'm fucking not getting any medicine today.
Yeah, but the flip side is in the States, you're also not getting it tomorrow because you don't have $1,000. So
True.
As bad, and I understand, and Britain's the other one. So it's like if we made a spectrum, right? So like Britain's healthcare system is considered even more broken and dysfunctional than Canada's. But at the end of the day, you're still eventually going to get some sort of medical, which isn't going to happen in the States.
Right.
It's the problem with our system.
Yeah, there's got to be some kind of meeting in the middle there somehow.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I always kind of look at Canada, and maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe I've just invented this in my head, but I kind of look at it if I put the spectrum and I put sort of Sweden all the way at the left and America in the right and Canada somewhere in the middle, and I always kind of look at Canada as probably good good compromise, or maybe Australia, maybe New Zealand, are better compromises.
Right.
Well, their tax system is better than America's, Canadian one.
Everybody's social system in those top few countries, though. And have you also noticed how many of the great countries in the world are former British colonies and speak English?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's this. Actually, I don't think I've showed this to you, Nick, yet. This one article I found, or maybe I did. Maybe I sent it to you. Denmark begs men to have sex with its feminists.
Yeah.
That's
old. That's an old story, and it actually worked. It worked. Their population is increased.
Really?
The population?
Yep.
What, in Denmark?
Denmark, yeah.
Oh, so that's another issue. So, Nick and I come from immigrant families, obviously, and so I'm very much in favor of legal immigration. I'm very much against illegal immigration, but I'm very much in favor of immigration, and people are having trouble separating those two. Mm-hmm. And one of the issues as an economist is that you have something called the age trap. And, in some of those European countries, the average age of a citizen now is 46.
Right, yeah. Oh, yeah.
46? They're only going to be working another 8 years.
Yeah, they're old.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the problems in the West is that they're not reproducing.
Right.
Western cultures aren't reproducing. Their there's less marriage, less reproduction. I think the average child rate in America is 1.9.
Yeah, so America was so you need to have two, right? They call it replacement. You need to have two, which means mom and dad die and there's two kids to replace them.
2.1 is what they say.
Yeah, so it used to be America was 2, and then we dropped below 2 just recently, just in the last 2 or 3 years.
That's right.
But countries like Italy, Ireland, countries that you joke about them, being sexually active or whatever, but they actually had birth rates that are much lower than the U.S. The U.S. only just dropped below 2 recently, but we are below 2 now.
Yeah, they're below 2. A lot of Western countries, like Canada's below 2, Japan is below 2, China's the lowest, I think.
So the countries that are facing the biggest age trap is China, Italy, and Japan. Mm-hmm. Are 3 of the worst. Those are the famous ones. In America, though, interesting point about America is that birth rates have always been down in America, or have been continually dropping. But because of immigration, we had effectively, the 2 children per family, and so that's another reason why immigration is really important. And if you look at Japan has 0 immigration, so the only way they can get babies is if they make them. And
I agree. Look, but how about not a Muslim terrorist from Somalia?
Well, the only people reproducing in the Western world today are the Mormons and the Muslims.
Yep,
that's about it. So the U.S. Maybe not necessarily 100% true, but a lot of Western nations that are going to replace their sort of, I guess you can call them indigenous groups with Muslims. Muslims are gonna replace them. They have fucking 8 kids each.
Yeah, Europe definitely is in big trouble. That's for sure.
if I'm not mistaken, even Latin America has preposterously low birth rates.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's been, I think, one of the biggest reasons for that is because there's this incredibly strange phenomenon in the West of politicizing sex and gender to the point where it makes reproduction fall.
It makes it impossible.
Yeah, it makes reproduction pretty much impossible. Absolutely. So
I think the takeaway, I guess, from this is that we need to have sex with Japanese women. Is that?
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying. Asian women. That's right. We need to go. We need to get into go over to China and Japan and fuck as many Asian women as we can. You probably get paid to do that.
Yeah, why not?
Get paid to impregnate Japanese women? That'd be all right.
All right.
Really,
well, what? Yeah, go on.
On the same day, I saw a report about Singapore, how Singapore's coping with the aging crisis, and so Singapore liberalized their immigration rules. Right, that's how they're coping with the aging and the low birth rates. And on the same day, there was a report about Japan and how they're coping with it. Robots.
Yeah, robots. Oh yeah, man. Sex bots.
They're building robots. All right, to give you an idea, the U.S. has 13.6 births per 1,000 people. All right? And then if we compare that to, let's just take Nigeria. I'm just picking a country out of the hat. 38.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's incredible.
Okay? So you look at the difference. And then let's take China. China is 12, right? So it's behind the U.S.
Yeah.
But the difference is China also has more women than men and more unmarried women. So I think that we expect the trend in China to get worse faster.
Okay. So
No, I thought there was more men than women in China.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's more men than women, but there's also more unmarriageable women. There's two phenomena.
Yeah.
One is that you have more men than women, and number two is that you have unmarriageable women.
right.
Yeah, let me ask you something about that. I see a lot of those women in Queens, in Flushing. What's that about? I don't understand that. This is fascinating to me.
Women over, first of all, in Chinese culture, and I don't know the exact age, we could look it up, but let's say 27 or something, it's already too late, right? If you're female and you're not married by like 27, you're done. The other one is if you studied abroad, if you make a lot of money, if you've had foreign boyfriends, there's a lot of things that can make a woman unmarriageable. So I know this woman, actually this woman I know that taught me a lot about entrepreneurship. She owns a very successful company here in China. She's essentially unmarriageable. A friend of mine sent me a picture from Times Square a couple of months ago. Her picture was in Times Square.
Wow.
Like she's that famous as an entrepreneur, right? And meanwhile, nobody wants to marry her. And she's not bad looking, and she's reasonably young. I mean, I think she's like...
Yeah, I know a couple like really attractive young Chinese professional women that they completely shut down to the concept of a man. They just take care of their families, and that's it. They're just a slave to their parents.
Yeah.
I think...
see, on this birth thing, Germany, 8. So
Wow.
Germany has almost half as many, a bit more than half as many births as the United States.
It's the end of the motherland.
Deutschland.
The fatherland. Well, a lot of these, for a lot of the Asian cultures, I think that there's still a very strong difference between men and women when it comes to what they're attracted to, especially when it comes to money. I mean, men in general, everywhere, don't give a shit how much a woman makes. It's not attractive to them. So a woman having a lot of money or making more money than a man is going to make her unmarriageable, especially in Asia, for sure.
So, yeah, in the West, though, okay, so in the West, right, or let's say in the United States, and I'm sure Canada's, the same, but although people like to believe that they're open to, I'm liberal, I have friends of other races, I have friends of other socioeconomic, blah, 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 it's been proven time and time again, if you sat down and made a list of everyone you know, all the people you know, which is like 300 to 600 people, like 80% of them are going to be within the same demographic as you. You know, education, you know, income, race. It's amazing. So anyway, so we do tend to marry. You know, if you're a lawyer in New York, you don't marry, you know, a cashier at Bloomingdale's. You know, you marry, you know, a female professional. So we do care. But you're right. We don't. A man doesn't usually marry for money unless he's a gigolo. But we do care that the woman is, you know, earns the same money that we do.
Or within the same
wage bracket. I don't know if that was always the case, though. That wasn't always the case, you know, at least in your lifetime, Antonio, where usually American girls would want to marry a guy that's masculine. He can actually, like, use a lawnmower or, you know, fix the siding of your house. It wasn't so much. It was more of his utility than it was, you know, about a monetary or money. You know.
Well, I think it's because a lot of the utility is translated as money today.
That's it. You don't have to know how to fix things because you just hire it done.
Yeah.
And a lot of things can't be fixed anymore. Cars can't be fixed anymore. You know.
Yeah.
You know, you can't fix that yourself anymore, no matter how good you are.
Now you have like a managerial white collar class in the United States now, where, you know, a woman that's highly educated, she's making six figures. She went to Yale with so and so, and now, you know, he's making six figures. So that's really putting a strain economically, where you have again really a class, a separation of classes within the middle class.
Yeah.
Mekon Farang says, I don't even care if a woman can read.
See, and he's never going to be alone on a Saturday night as a result. He's doing it right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here I am looking for personality and demand.
She's illiterate. Fuck it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's but you're right though. So in Asia, I don't think a guy would ever say, oh, you know, I met the perfect girl and she owns this really successful business and her billboard is in Times Square.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's in the States, you know, you would, or Canada, you would.
Yeah.
You know, in Japan, they have these business women, executives, and they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a pretend wedding.
Yeah. But I mean, when I was in Indonesia, I asked. I was working at a really, really good international school, and most of the teachers were female, obviously. And I went around and I asked a lot. There was a lot of unmarried women that were teaching. Obviously, they're probably kind of in their early 20s to mid 20s, getting into marriageable age, right? Like reaching that point. And I remember asking a whole bunch of them, saying, would you date any of the security guards? What do you think they said?
No.
Absolutely. No. But a man would probably date a female security guard, a male teacher, but it wouldn't be the other way around. And none of them would. Yeah.
Well, in Asia, again, like it wouldn't be as important to him that she makes money, and in fact, that may even be a turnoff, right? Mm-hmm. So a man will date a woman that's of a lower status, if you will.
Yeah, sure.
If she's young and pretty, right? But she'd have to be young and pretty, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. In China, it would be a lot of it would have to do with the family, that her family and his family were compatible economically, rather than the individuals.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I can see that. But I mean, these unmarriageable women, we call it in MGTOW, we call it a woman hitting the wall. She hits a certain age. I mean, even here, there's a lot of unmarriageable women in America today, because a lot of it is to blame on ideologies like feminism and politicized sexuality. So what happens is women are encouraged to become breadwinners and independent and focus on
no responsibility.
Yeah, focus on their careers. Then all of a sudden they're 35, 38, and nobody wants to fucking marry them, man. It's too late.
When I lived in New York, so I was assistant head of private wealth management for a large bank in New York City, and so I was making good money, and I'd studied overseas, and I had pretty nice lifestyle, and I kept complaining that I just couldn't meet a girl that had similar values, and I remember I was in a bar one night, and I just complained about that to one of my buddies, and this older guy that was sitting two stools down, he goes, well, because when two of you people meet each other, you hate each other. It's like you're both overachievers, and when you meet, you hate each other.
Right.
So a couple weeks later, I went on a date with this girl that she was also like an assistant vice president. She made like way more than me. She made like 5 times what I was making, like one of these crazy New York, incomes. And on her profile, I met her through like a dating thing before there were dating apps. And on her profile, it was like, oh, she really enjoys reading. So I said, oh yeah, I love reading. What do you read? She's like, well, every year when I go on holiday, I try and read, like 3 books. And and everything just came down to like everything on her profile. I mean, it was true, but it was just ridiculous. It was like, oh, she's really into working out. I'm like, oh, that's great, and she had a great body. I go, oh, when do you go to the gym? She's like, oh, at 4:30 a.m.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, because she works 50 hours, a day or whatever, and so she had to train at 4:30 a.m. and she had a private trainer. And she had a great body, but I mean, she was killing herself for that. And I like reading, but I can only read when I'm on holiday, once a year when I take my 2 weeks holiday.
No time to read.
No time for anything. It's just literally basically what it came down to is no time for anything. And so then I'm thinking, well, if we're dating, are you gonna have time for me?
Right. Probably not.
Well, a lot of the houses, these big mansions on the water, on the North Shore of Long Island, or the South Shore of Long Island, I'm talking property tax that have like $50,000. They're all empty all the time, those houses. Why? All those people are at work in Manhattan.
That's a good point.
They're all empty. They look like tombs, man.
And being a guy, as much as we have more equality, let's say in Canada or the States than in a lot of countries, there still is sort of an implication that guys pay for dates, and you certainly want to be able to do that. You certainly don't want to be in a position with. I mean, I'm fine if a woman wants to buy me dinner, but I don't want her to feel like she has to pay for everything. That's not nice either. Now, as a guy, you don't normally care what the woman is making, but a woman like that's so busy and she's making 5 times what you are, there's a high probability she's going to say to you, hey, it's a 3-day weekend, let's fly to fucking Bermuda or something, because she can.
Because she can afford it.
Yeah, and she's so desperate for sort of relaxation, because she has so little free time. So she definitely wants to do the things that are fun to her during her holiday, regardless of what they cost. And it's sort of like where I am now in China, like with the kind of salary and living situation I have here. When I have a 3 or 4 day weekend, I could go to Europe. Like it's just
right.
And I would, and it's just not a thing because you don't care about the money. So that was something I was worried about too, because I couldn't afford to just drop everything and fly to Bermuda anytime. I could do it once or twice a year. I couldn't do it.
Yeah. Well, these I don't know. I'm obviously not in the dating scene. I'm not in that. So I don't have a lot of.
I bet your wife's happy about that.
No, I'm divorced. I'm divorced.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I divorced. I got married and divorced in Indonesia.
I got married and divorced when I was living in Germany.
Ah. Did it go all right?
What's that?
Did it go all right, the divorce?
Yeah. We agreed that what we differed on was like, I wanted to be happy and she wanted me to be miserable.
No shit.
And I said, well, honey, let's try and do things you like. What makes you happy? She said, seeing you in pain.
Oh, yeah.
What was the story you told me about her? She used to complain about smells, and she's yell about it.
Yeah. It's funny because you think like we're European, like you forget that we're not really European.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not. So I'm married to this German woman, and so I come home and I'm cooking, and the whole house smells like lasagna, and I'm making brownies, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so nice, and I got Christmas music playing, and the thing, and she walks in, and she goes, "Es stinkt hier rein." Like any strong smell in Germany is called a stink. Like they don't like strong smells. And she flipped out. She comes in. I had this perfect Christmas thing going. She comes in, opens all the windows in the whole house, and she's screaming. Turns on all the lights. You know, you can't have like dim lights.
It's to look a lot like Christmas.
Oh my god! And I was like, wow, this is an allegory for our whole relationship, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's funny how every guy I meet past the age of 50 says the same thing. Whatever you do, don't get married.
Yeah, you know, that was one of those days though where I almost said to her and her boyfriend they were going to have to move out.
Oh shit!
I was this close.
Yeah.
She finally said to me before we got divorced, she goes, it's not that I don't love you. I wish we could, stay together, live together, but just you would date other people. And I'm like, honey, we've been doing that for months.
Still didn't work.
It's so funny you should say that. Oh my God, this podcast is going to come back to haunt me.
Are
You're not recording this, right?
No, it'll go on. It'll be on the internet forever.
Oh, well, that's nice.
You can't take it back. Isn't it? Me and Ayam were talking about how YouTube and Google, Facebook, retroactively punish you for something.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, I think it's insane. I read about somebody losing their job just recently because, 4 years ago on Twitter.
Oh yeah, that happened.
Said,
That happened to that director for Disney, James Gunn. That recently happened to him. Disney fired him. He made Disney hundreds of millions of dollars, and they fired him because 6 years ago he made pedophilia jokes on Twitter.
Oh my God!
Yeah. Oh yeah, man.
Why is he making pedophilia jokes?
I don't know.
He's affiliated with Disney. What an idiot!
But it was 6 years ago. He wasn't even an employee of Disney then, right?
Look at the divorce for alimony, or they can go back how far back to go and get your money. If you get a divorce.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's wild, man. I sent Ayam an article the other day about how it's good for women to divorce their husbands to get their Social Security when they die.
Oh God, that's terrifying. I saw that.
I said that's so horrible.
Why would it, I can't? I could not, with a good conscience, recommend to any young man today to get married. I just couldn't do it. I would feel guilty.
You know what though? This is really weird. For the first time in my life, I'm starting to really want kids, and because I wrestled, in college, so I have all these friends that are, in their 20s, and so now I'm watching them all getting married and they're having kids, and I'm like, wow, I really wish, I had kids, I really do. But then the flip side is I can't imagine wanting to be married and
No.
Yeah, it was such a terrible. My marriage was such a horrible experience.
Yeah.
Plus,
one time wasn't enough for you. Listen, I can tell you from my father getting remarried, it's been an absolute disaster for him. It was the biggest mistake.
Those women charge $100 an hour, so you can imagine by the end of the year how much money that was.
You could do surrogacy. You know that, right?
I could do what?
Surrogacy. You could pay.
When I was in the Army, I did some insurgency. They dropped me off behind enemy. Is that?
No, surrogacy, man. You hand 10 grand over to some Thai lady, stick your semen in her, and then when the kid's born, she gives him to you. Done.
You could do that for like $20 and some. Oh, they give you the baby.
Yeah, they give you the kid, man.
Oh, you kidding? I had women in Thailand I never even met coming up to me with babies saying they were mine.
Yeah. But they wouldn't let you keep it.
No, in fact, when I went for my stem cell treatments for my knees, a lot of people asked me why I was going to Thailand. And it's because the stem cells come from babies, and babies are cheaper in Thailand.
Oh, okay. From aborted babies?
It's horrible. I'm never going to get a job again.
That's true. Hey, I got a question. Hey, Tony, you know anything about the organ trafficking? I was reading up that it's popular in Malaysia, where they actually take children's organs and sell them on the black market.
You know what? I don't know that much about that at all, but what I do know is that when I was in Thailand doing some stories on things that were happening to Hill Tribe people, that was one of the things that was being claimed, was that children were being put in orphanages and then their organs were being sold. And I just very briefly looked into it, and the first doctor I talked to, he's like, well, you can't take organs out of a child and put them in an adult. I'm like, oh, yeah. That makes sense, right? Like, kid's 7 years old. You're going to put his heart, in an adult. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything about it. It just seemed like, I think it's one of those things people invent to make a situation seem worse than it is. Cause
I think Nick and I both understand that you probably can't say too much about it because the Chinese are probably listening right now.
No. No. I remember like a baby, like a tribal baby, died in the hospital in Thailand, right? And then this NGO worker was claiming that they were harvesting organs, and I remember this doctor immediately goes, well, you can't first of all, you can't harvest organs from someone who died usually and put them in a living person.
Right.
Number one, and number two, you can't. Someone who died of, natural, whatever. You can't just, somebody dies and you just cut their heart out and like stick it in somebody. You can't do that. He goes, and you can't organs from a baby, and and I'm like, yeah, that makes total sense. So I think it's one of those stories that's frequently, comes up. I don't know if it's true. I do know that there are poor people in the Philippines. There's whole villages where people sell their kidneys. That's a thing.
Oh, that's big money.
Yeah.
It's like a few $1,000s.
Hey, before we end the show, I want to tell Ayam and our listeners a little bit about your time in Burma.
So, wow, that was out of left field. What about it?
That's a great story.
Didn't happen. No.
Okay.
So,
never mind.
No, there's Burma, the population in Burma, like, only less than half the population are actually Burman, or of the Burman ethnic group. Mm-hmm. So they're a plurality. They're not a majority, but they hold all the political power and always have, and they control the army and stuff like that. So there's all these ethnic groups in Burma, and the government's had a genocide against the ethnic groups forever. And at the time I was there, most of what was being written was written about the Karen ethnic group, and Rambo made the Rambo 4 movie was about the Korean ethnic group, and people thought that was a limited thing, that this Korean ethnic group was being targeted. It's like, no, all the ethnic groups are being targeted, and at that time the Rohingyas were also being targeted, but it didn't make the international press. And now finally some famous person or some politician, somebody found out about this Rohingya thing, and now it's the cause du jour. But and it is true, and they do need help, and it's a legitimate cause, but all the ethnic groups in Burma are being subjected to genocide.
By who again? By who?
By the Burmese government, which is controlled by Burmans, by ethnic Burman. Right.
Yeah, that's genocide's a common theme in Southeast Asia, man.
Man, it is just nuts. And that's another one. When people complain about racism in this, I love it. You could probably Google a phrase right now, U.S. is the most racist country, and you find 1 million articles and claims. It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
It is.
Like, there's no other country, and again, you got there's 20 good countries. I did a paper called 20 Good Countries. Yeah. There's 20 good countries in the world. Yeah. If you take all these measurements, Human Development Index, equality, wealth, blah 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 blah, healthcare, education, there's 20 countries, and the rest of the world is just
the rest of the world is shitholes. Isn't that what Trump calls them?
It is. It is. And I did a short piece on that shithole comment of Donald Trump. Somebody was like, well, what does he mean by that? I'm like, oh, he means this. I posted all the data.
Yeah, man. He means genocide. Yeah. That's what he means.
It means genocide. Fuck. It means, you're not allowed to go to school. It means, Well,
it's Canada's got a lot of immigrants coming in now too. A lot of Africans, a lot of Syrians, Nepalese, Afghanis, and so I find that a lot of these immigrants, and I mean, I've only been back for a couple of years, but there's a lot more immigration in the city I'm in than there ever was when I left. And I find that a lot of these immigrants are very, very racist. Like openly racist. I've seen that.
It depends. Like openly racist towards what, the native population?
Yeah, the natives.
I don't have that at all in New York at all. Zero. Well, haven't been subjugated to it once.
The worst that I see are the blacks. I just the other day in the store that I'm working in now, there was 3 black immigrants came in, and then an Indian, like a Native American guy, came in. And as soon as the Native American guy walked in, the black guy just said, "You fucking Indian, get the fuck out of here." Just completely unprovoked.
They just pissed and mad at him.
Yeah.
Obviously the natives did something wrong to him, did him dirty at one point or another, and he's all pissed. It's funny you bring up like a story like that. I knew a guy named Muhammad. He was an immigrant from Pakistan, and black people just kept fucking with him over and over and over, and now he just can't stand black people. No matter what, there's no redeeming. I think he could, like, a black man can run into his house to save his firstborn, he would still hate black people.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of like you become less racist if you go to schools that are integrated, or if you travel overseas and you see a lot of different things, and the more knowledge you have, like, the less racist you become.
Right.
So I think, so it's the broader your experience base, right? So, like, if I got robbed, let's say tomorrow I'm walking down the street in New York and I get robbed by a black person, I'm not going to suddenly go, oh, all black people are bad, right? Because I've had however many thousands of positive interactions, or with black people, right, and then one negative one. But if you're an immigrant and you don't know any better, because I hear it all the time with the Chinese that are planning to move to the United States, and they say terrible things about American black people.
Oh yeah,
they're like, oh, guns, and they rob you. I'm like, dude, you go live there. I mean, everybody's the same. Everyone in the world wants a job, wants their children to go to school, wants to live in a safe neighborhood. I mean, everybody wants that. Everybody. I don't care what color you are.
Yeah, well, my experience was coming back to Canada or North America, Canada specifically. I did hear a lot of stories about Americans are so racist. They're so racist, and I thought, really? Are you sure? I just spent over a decade in Southeast Asia, and I'm pretty sure they're more racist than we are, man.
That is true.
Like really racist.
Like every country in Asia basically hates all all other Asians. Like, it's nuts.
Yes,
it's nuts. Cambodians hate Thais. They hate them. They hate the Chinese. The Japanese look down on everybody. Chinese look down on everybody.
Yeah,
like it's just unbelievable.
And it's real racism, man. Not like saying nigger.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's real fucking racism. It's in your face racism. So
in China, 80% of hotels, you can't sleep there if you're not Chinese.
Yeah, there you go. So
there's nothing like that, in the States or Canada.
No, there's nothing like people that say that shit in the States. They I don't think they've left their neighborhood.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't want to take anything away from the sins of the past. Let's say black people had a really rough time in America, and it's terrible. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to. But as an economist, as an academic, I think it's very important to always quantify what you're doing and what you're talking about. And when you want to tell me that segregation, segregation in the past was a bad thing, but it wasn't the whole United States. Only certain parts of the United States had segregation. Only certain parts had slavery.
They make it sound it was all of America.
I know.
New York outlawed slavery in like 1640 or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
And me and Nick hadn't come yet to America.
Yeah.
So we don't count.
like what percentage of the population were immigrants and came after the 20th century started, and
we're white now. You try explaining that to any immigrant, like, no, don't you be lumping me with the drunk Irishman. Don't you dare.
Do you know when Italians became? Do you know when Italians became white?
So the suburbs.
No. Do you know when Italians became white?
When?
1943. True story. When it's 1943 or 44 when Mussolini
gave up. Yeah,
gave up, and then Italy was effectively our ally, and then they decided to change the classification of Italians to white to make everybody more inclusive and on the same side. But up until World War II, Italians were not white.
So before they were white, they were wops?
They were, WAP allegedly means without papers.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Or organ grinder.
Organ grinder.
That one used to hurt my feelings. That was offensive. I could honestly say that. Or organ grinder.
I remember one time in school on Long Island, I got in a fight with a Korean kid, and I said something like, about his nose being really small or something, like some sort of racially offensive thing. And I still remember they had these like teacher aides. They kept order on the playground, and they were all Italian. And the woman, she came over to me. I still remember her name was like Mrs. Lombardi or something. And she's like, Antonio, is it no nice you say that to the Korean boy? Is it like he call you a guinea wop? And it was so funny, and it was so shocking to hear somebody say that at school. But you know what? And then I never did it again. I don't ever remember making another racial comment to anybody. Like, yeah, I wouldn't like that.
You'll love this, Antonio. You know how many ethnic groups I'm dealing with at my job?
Oh, you got tons over there.
38 and counting.
Wow.
Yeah.
38. How wild is that?
And there's no other country. There is no other country. I mean,
yeah, New York, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's not. No. In Thailand, it's impossible that you walk into a bank and the teller is anything but Thai.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
And in Germany, so many things are civil service. So if it's civil service, they can't even be like naturalized citizens a lot of times. So the odds of being pulled over by a policeman that's anything other than a poster child for the Nazi Party, is very unlikely. Oh, did I just do a racism?
Well, you did. He did a racism.
We should wrap the show up. We're at 3.5. But before, there's a few comments I want to just go over and read here. Most of them are from Mekong Farang. He says, Luke's Thailand divorce cost $13.
What a joke.
Thailand divorce. Jesus. He also says Burmese women are the ugliest in Asia. I don't know about that. I don't.
Yeah, they are bad. Papua New Guinea, though.
Guys are awful. Okay, for the record, I'm not part of that discussion.
Oh shit! Yeah, Papua New Guinea. Ooh. Yeah.
Abbo's Australia.
Anyway, guys are awful.
Well, anyway, we're gonna have to close the talk, Antonio. But it was really great talking to you. I'll make sure that links to your Amazon and YouTube are in the show notes so people can check that out. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Appreciate it. We had almost 20 people watching today, which is good.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. It's a little bit more than we usually get, so that's good.
Well, thanks for coming on, Antonio. I appreciate it. I know we've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Send me the link.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, you want to, if you would like to come on again, maybe in the future, in a couple months or whatever.
Sure. Wait till I do something great.
Okay.
No, don't wait that long.
But yeah, come on
All right.
anytime, man. Come on anytime. And it was really good to meet you.
And while you're in China, you can tell us some stories on just the insanity of the daily grind.
Yeah.
I got to tell you why this was exciting for me. This event, it's the only time I'll get to speak English this week.
That's
It's
good.
the only thing I have to look forward to. So
Right on.
it's the only conversation I'm going to have. So yeah,
I
my
can
life
imagine.
is enviable.
Yeah.
Speaking English is good. Yeah, it's fun sometimes.
Having conversations is good, man. I mean, I know how you feel to a certain degree. I mean, if you're surrounded by people that don't speak English and you try to have a conversation, it's different.
Or the only
Yeah.
other people to have a conversation with are degenerates, on the Phnom Penh slide.
I know, that's just so funny. Like, I go to Cambodia, one of the things I really enjoy about it is just being able to meet people and hang out and drink coffee and talk, and that's really nice. Because in China, I don't like. Today, normally I would have gone to Weifang to wrestle, and then I'd hang out with my wrestling teammate, and that's like the longest conversations I'll have all week. Those are all in Chinese, and when they're not on the same level as this, because they don't. Yeah, different kind of conversation.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, thanks
All
a
right.
lot.
Hey guys.
Okay, I'm going to stop the stream. We can keep talking for a bit. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you in about a week.
Ciao, ciao.